Hey everybody, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast, episode 140. This week we have Wade Laughter with us. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Steve. Thanks for the invite.
He's quite the expert on CBD and will be telling us all kinds of wonderful things here in a few moments. We also have Roger from I Love Growing Marijuana.com.
Good evening, everyone. How you doing?
And we have Tara.
We have an echo on your end, I think, Steve.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Okay, there we go. Hi, guys.
All right, I think I fixed it. So thanks a lot for joining us this week. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and maybe how you got started with cannabis?
Sure. Back in 1995, I had a job that required me to pee in a jar at a moment's notice, and was engaged in a spiritual practice that asked me to abstain from intoxicants. So I wasn't very versed in cannabis, but I was diagnosed with glaucoma and a pretty aggressive case of it. So I had good medical insurance, blah, blah, blah. And the ophthalmologist put me on some eye drops that, to make a long story short, made me profoundly ill. Ended up in the hospital at one point, and it took about 15 months to figure out it was the eye drops that were the problem. And so I stopped taking eye drops. And even the federal government, even back in 1996, said that cannabis seemed to help with glaucoma. So I started trying to learn more about that. And then meantime in California, which is where I've lived most of my adult life, we passed Prop 215, which created a medicinal use clause in the Constitution of the state of California that said that a patient had a right to access to cannabis. And so I started learning more about it and found that for glaucoma anyway, you needed to smoke joints pretty much every day, all day. And that wasn't really workable for me, but I also didn't want to go blind. And I was told that that's what would happen if I didn't start taking these drops again. So I started off with 3 little plants in a closet because I cared about what I was going to be putting into my body. I wanted to know that it was the right thing and it was going to be free of contaminants and poisons. Pretty soon moved out of the closet into a small garage, and then a bigger garage, and then a basement, and then eventually in 2004, in conjunction with a group of people that had formed a patients collective, we took a lease on a small warehouse in San Francisco, and started working there pretty industriously, and was serving a number of the dispensaries and still trying a bunch of different cultivars, looking for something that would give me good relief for the glaucoma without having to smoke joints all day, every day. And started working with medicine makers, trying to figure out ways to build up the cannabinoids in the body without so much psychoactivity. And of course, THC was basically the only cannabinoid that was happening in those days. And anyway, make a long story short, one of the members of our collective brought some seeds from Switzerland, and we sprouted them and got 2 different phenotypes in those seeds. This was in 2007. And the one phenotype was a really aggressive and beautiful grower, but it was high in THC. The other one amazed me from the very beginning. She was very lush, very productive. Yeah, go ahead, Tara.
Can I ask, when you said high in THC, how much were you saying when you were saying high? What's your
the test results? I named that one Alchemy. It was about 18% THC
18, okay.
indoors in 2007. And I was working in soil and had invested a lot of money in the right kind of lights and was really pushing lighting frequencies and all of that to get the best yields and results. And anyway, long story short, one of those 2 phenotypes from that group of seeds, we ended up naming Harliquin. And it got that name for a variety of reasons. One reason is when she was fully mature in a sea of green flowering plants of other cultivars, this one turned all different colors, purple and red and orange and green. And it was just there were beautiful plants in this sea of green. The other reason is the Harlequin is a character from an early opera, one of the first operas, and I'm a live theater fan. And the Harlequin is a jokester. And I had, at this point, when we named Harlequin, we had probably a third to a half of our warehouse was full of these plants because I really fell in love with it right away. But I was starting to get reports that people were not happy about it. They wanted to know if I had something else because they weren't getting stoned. And that was a problem. But one of the members of the collective said, it's the damnedest thing, Wade. He said, I have surgically repaired shoulder playing football in school. And he said, I've been in and out of opioid withdrawal rehab a bunch of times because my shoulder never stops hurting. It never stops hurting. And I take the pain pills and they make it so I don't care, but it doesn't stop hurting until I smoke a joint of this. And I smoke a joint of this and my shoulder doesn't hurt. What the fuck is up with that? Pardon my language, but that's what he said. And I said, I don't know, Nick. So I took samples of it to Harborside, both of them. The alchemy people were really excited about, but the Harlequin. And yeah, it came back. It was, if I remember right, it was about 9% CBD and 5.5% THC, something like that. And the folks at Steep Hill and at Harborside were very excited. They said I should, they wanted to know if I had live cuts of it. And I did. And then to make a long story short, they introduced me to Fred Gardner, the publisher of O'Shaughnessy's, and his online presence is called beyondthc.com. And Fred has been doing, he started researching CBD back in, I think he said it was 1992. He attended a conference in Acapulco of the International Cannabinoid Research Association. And McPartland presented a paper on CBD, and it was quite a hot topic. And anyway, in 2007, 2008, Fred Gardner and I and a couple of other folks started what's now known as Project CBD. And some other folks took that over and are doing good work with it. Since then, Harlequin, like I said, all of that came from one group of seeds. And I worked with it for about another year. And then for a variety of reasons, one of the folks in our collective took on doing all the heavy work of getting those cuttings out to as many people as possible for up until 2014. And myself, I went on to start working with other cultivars and started learning about how cannabis can work as a medicine. It was a gift that to give it away because of all of the beautiful gifts that have come back to me as a result of giving it away. I've gotten to know researchers and clinicians and patients and manufacturers and other cultivators and other breeders. And it's really opened my world. I mean, when Harlequin happened, there were about 8 or 10 people in the whole world that knew what I was doing. And now look how much it's changed. And I think in a good way. Over the last couple of years, our local jurisdiction here in the magic known as legalization in California, local jurisdictions get a lot of autonomy to decide what kind of cannabis activity is allowed. And on my beautiful farm that is a dim pure farm, and I in 2015 paid taxes on almost $100,000 in income here on the farm. And today, if I have any cannabis on my farm, it has to be my 6 personal use plants, and they have to be indoors. That's how poorly.
I don't know what happened there.
Whoops.
In a second.
Wade just dropped out. Dab time.
There we go.
He's back.
Yeah.
Cheers,
That was
everyone.
weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, maybe the authorities didn't like my last bit there about how legalization is working in California.
Speaking of,
But yeah, through that they passed that law that said no cannabis activity in our county back in 2016 in January, and so I shut down the commercial side of House of Harliquin and started making it a very focused on patient needs, particularly the needy, the most needy in our community. And I got involved with a young man named Forrest Hurd and an organization he started called Caladrius Network. And our mission statement in Caladrius Network is to provide education and, if appropriate, cannabis therapies to the families of catastrophically ill children at no cost to those families ever. Yeah, exactly.
That was amazing. That episode of Hash Church with you guys and Forrest and showing those videos about those children, like that was heart wrenching. But it was I needed to see it, and I seriously I don't think I ever shared a video so much than that one. That was amazing. Thank you for all the work you do. That was awesome.
It's very powerful experience for any person to have to deal with a child who's seizing or a child whose skin is peeling off. And what we have found is that cannabis, when it's prepared, when it's grown properly, when it's the right cultivar, the right chemistry in the plant, and it's grown properly and it's manufactured properly and it's put into a formulation, a preparation that gives the relief that this does. And when you see it with your eyes, it's hard to be at peace with the fact that legalization is working the way it is here in California, I gotta say. It's really kind of a drag. Because under California state law, Caladrius Network was a legal entity up until the end of 2018. But effective January 1st of 2018, it's no longer legal to donate cannabis or to give it away in any quantity at all. The man wants his tax money, and I know that part of the purpose of the regulations is to ensure safe, clean, pure product. That's wonderful. It's a shame that legalization, which happened as a result of the folks who most need cannabis in their life, are the ones who are getting left out in the new legal
in every state.
And
every state that it's going rec, it's hurting medical. It's hurt it here in Washington as well. But you guys are really taking a blunt there.
Yeah. Anyway, it's the plant will win out. It has survived prohibition. It has survived camp and Schedule 1 narcotic and all of the things that have been done to it over the years and the people who have worked with it. And we will win out on this. The fire has been lit in too many people's minds and hearts about what this plant can do. And it's time to overgrow the government. Everybody should be able to grow their own, just like you can grow your own tomatoes. There's no threat to health and human safety, no danger to the public welfare, none of that. It's all nonsense based on prohibition. And yeah, that's kind of who I am and where I'm coming from. Pardon my rant there, but
no, That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
I'm a firm
No,
believer
that's
in
what we need to
cannabis.
hear. Wait, that's what we're here for. We need to get the word out. People need to know what's going on. They don't know. They don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a shame that, I mean, we have had quote unquote legal cannabis in California since 1996. And by an initiative petition of the people, a fairly resounding majority said yes, it should be the right of any patient who needs cannabis, in the opinion of their doctor, to have access to it. And then, yeah, we went about doing it, and it was working pretty well on most fronts. And yeah, the legislative process is less than ideal, and Lord knows it is very slow. And it's kind of a shame that after all this experience California's had, we're setting such a poor example for other states about how to do this. The cannabis plant should be readily available and easily accessible to anyone that wants to grow it. That's the way to do this. It's not a danger in any way.
Absolutely, 100.
Boom.
So
Well, that's enough of me for the moment. What else is going
No,
on?
and this is about you. Seriously, like this is why you're here. Like they get to hear us every week, right? Like this is what we want to. Yeah.
So you've done a lot of experimenting.
Well,
with,
I mean, here, one of the conversations that I find myself having frequently with people who are against cannabis in one way or another, even as they come to understand the medical value of it, they try and make a distinction between recreational and medical. And from my point of view, the only distinction there is at the end user. Why are they using it? Are they using it because they'd like to be inspired or relaxed or feel good or to recreate? What's wrong with that? I don't understand what's wrong with that, right there all by itself. But on the other hand, there's the medical need, and those persons who have a legitimate medical need for cannabis, it really should be a right. You should have access to it. You shouldn't have to go to a drugstore or a dispensary or spend half your month's rent to get the medicine you need for to get yourself through that same month. And meantime, that means you do without food. It's crazy the way it's working in California at the moment. But getting back to that distinction between recreational and medical, one of the things that I have tried to help people understand is that, in my opinion, all cannabis is potentially medical. And what I really mean when I talk about medical cannabis is that every step of the way, from the nursery and the breeding process that goes on there, and the propagation of cuttings and or seeds, all the way through cultivation and harvest and processing and manufacturing and formulation, all the way through to informing the end user. Every step of the way is done to the highest possible standards of purity and cleanliness, of integrity, about recognizing that the end user is someone who's counting on your work to potentially save their life. That's a heavy lift. But that's what medical means to me. Medical is about how you work with the plant, and the plant responds to our intentions. It's very clear to me that that's the case. When your intention is to, in your breeding program, if your intention is to find variations of the cannabis plant that are rich in cannabinoids and terpenes that are of benefit to humans, I know there's all kinds of science that can guide breeders in how to make that happen, but I've always counted on and had pretty good luck with, how does this plant feel to me? And how do the patients, the people who actually need this plant that come to the garden, how do they respond to this potential mother plant? Looking for that kind of information, opening yourself to what the plants offer to us, is how I've always guided the choices I make in breeding. And over the last few years, as testing has become cheaper and easier to access, I like to verify what I do through an analytical lab. But to tell you how deep into the roots I am about how this all works, I have my own little lab tests right here at home. I have 3 dogs that if you've ever looked at my website, you might have seen 3 dogs, 3 big dogs walking along with me in a video. Well, they are lab crosses, and all 3 of them have various health issues because they're getting to be old dogs. And one of them, about 4 years ago, started going into the garden, and he was very selective about which plants he would eat. He has Lyme disease. He would take leaves off of plants and chew them up and swallow them. And he was so respectful about it, he wouldn't even shake the plant. And I would watch what he was doing, and I would think, what is going on here? This is a dog eating cannabis plants. Because I know they eat grass and whatnot. Well, it turns out that Luke only eats leaves off of plants that are really high in CBD and have virtually no THC. He will eat those plants. All the rest of them he ignores. And so now his sister and his brother, all 3 of them don't eat plants, but I can make, once I've made an oil from cannabis plant material, I can take a small sample of that oil and put it into a small batch of ghee and then offer it on my finger to my dogs. And usually they're a little bit shy if it's a new smell, but they'll try it because they've gotten good results in the past with it. And they'll take a couple of tastes of it, and then they'll go about the rest of their day. And then the next day or that night, I'll offer them a taste of that same butter. And if they eat more of it, it's high in CBD, really low in THC, that oil. Whereas if they turn away or go hide, I know it has THC in it, because dogs are extraordinarily sensitive to THC. So that's how much I love the roots. And at the same time, I love the science. I love understanding the chemistry of the plant and how it affects the body and how it works in the body. So when you talk about medicine, to me, the whole plant, cannabis plant, is potentially medicinal. It's just what's the need of the end user, and how is the plant worked with, and how's the product made. If your bottom line is how much money can I make by doing this work, then it's quite possible you'll make a lot of money, but I'm not convinced at all that your choices will lead you to make the best medicine. And that's why I think intention has a lot to do with the quality and the integrity and the efficacy, how effectively these preparations actually work. Because there's all kinds of products out on the market that have cannabinoids in them, but I hear a lot from folks that this cream that they found at the dispensary, it's got this in it, and yeah, it smells nice, but it doesn't really help my arthritis. And meantime, some preparations that we've had in the past work remarkably well. And some of that is learning how to formulate things so that they are readily taken into the body. But also it's learning the chemistry that works for the intended effects.
Or the growing consistency and who's growing it, right? Or how they're treating the plant. And like, if you can't control the grow on up, how are you going to create that good medicine at the end, right?
Well, that's my experience, Tara. I look, one of the conversations that's happening in the Dragonfly Earth family is starting to keep track of data that can show the truth of what we're discussing. I believe it to be true. I certainly have heard from patients there's some kind of difference going on with the preparations that we have made in the past that they don't find with other preparations that seem that the label and or the person who offered to them says is similar or should be the same. What I really hold to be true is the plant does the heavy work. The plant does the real magic in all of this. It's our job, our responsibility to provide for the plants what they need to do their job and to preserve that job as best we can in offering it to the end user. That's really the paradigm, if you will, of medicinal, and for that matter, I think the recreational, quote unquote, whatever that means, side of cannabis will come to understand the importance of that at some point.
Yeah. What's that saying about, even though you don't know that you're getting medical benefits from it, you still might be receiving something from it or something? Wasn't there some saying like that?
Yeah.
You might not know the benefits, even though you might be receiving something or something,
it's fascinating. CBD. When I first smoked Harliquin, I was really not very much of a cannabis smoker at that point. I'm a hash. I like concentrates. And I tried Harliquin, and I thought, I don't get this. I like the taste and everything else, but I don't get it. And finally, I smoked enough at one point that my body felt relaxed, not unlike I feel when I get out of a hot tub. And I realized, oh, this is good. This is okay. I get it. And then I realized that, like, I used to do a lot of sailing and rowing on the bay, and when I'd smoke a joint of something that had some Harliquin in it, the rowing was more fun. It was easier to pace myself. I was more in tune with the water. It wasn't so much a psychoactive, rip the top of my head off kind of thing. It was more like, I feel good. Hey, that's not a bad thing. It's okay to feel good. And and since then, yeah, that's a lot what I hear from people. It's, if you're in pain, CBD can be really remarkable for pain relief. CBD can be really remarkable in some seizure scenarios. CBD can be really helpful for migraines, for peripheral neuropathy, for multiple sclerosis, for autism, there's so many things. But for virtually all of those people, I've found again and again that THC needs to be there as well, and ideally some of the other cannabinoids. And that's why I think the full extract cannabis oil is really the way to go on making formulations and preparations. Yeah.
Really love hearing that.
I know there's a lot of fascination with distillates and crystal and diamonds and all of these. And I love the geekiness and the scientific pursuit of purity that's going on there. But I know enough science to know that we don't always get it right when we're doing science. That's part of what science is making a statement or an assertion and then going about proving it through experiment. And my practical experience with cannabis as medicine suggests again and again that you can decrease the dosage and get increased benefit in a preparation for most conditions if you have the full range of cannabinoids that are found in the plant. And the real fun part comes in figuring out which specific chemistry works for which specific conditions. And what's fascinating, of course, is every person is different. Like you can get kids with, we have a group of kids with pretty profound issues around epilepsy. And a number of them have identical diagnoses from their doctor, Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, or what's the other one? Anyway, and yeah, both of those type of epilepsies are characterized by many different types of seizures happening to the same person over a period of time. And what we found is that some of these kids, they get pretty profound differences in frequency, intensity, and duration of their seizures at smaller doses when we find the right preparation. And some of those kids get more THC than CBD. Some of them get more CBD than THC. Some of them get almost just CBD. And they have identical diagnoses, and yet they get the results that we're looking for from different versions of the cannabis plant.
And so each one, even though they all have the same diagnoses and they're all kind of basically the same, even the same treatment isn't the same for everybody, basically, is what you're saying. Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, epilepsy is a particularly challenging condition because for the most part, we don't really understand what causes it. And the seizures are a symptom, if you will. And so most of Western medicine is about treating symptoms. And yet, in some way, cannabis seems to interact with the central nervous system and the signaling system of the body. And that's where the seizures happen, is in the signaling system of the body. That somehow they interact. When the chemistry is right for that individual's needs, we see, like I said, really dramatic reduction in the frequency of seizures, in the intensity of the seizures, and the duration of the seizures.
Wow.
All three things can improve. I mean, Forrest's son, he doesn't like it when I tell stories about what happens in that family because it's so nightmarish. But at one point, Silas was having about 2,500 seizures a month. They were going to the hospital every week because he was just, it was hugely nightmarish. I mean, think about that. That's like 80 seizures a day, every day. And it's day and night. It's not like it's, just during work hours. It's 24 hours a day. And then a cultivar that popped up, it was actually a gift from some folks, anyway, called Medihaze, back in 2012, popped up here. And it turns out Medihaze, which is not unlike Harliquin, it has a little more CBD than THC, but it has a bunch of different terpenes than Harliquin. Worked really well for Silas. He went on a Friday, he had 80 some seizures. Friday night, they gave him some Medihaze preparation, some more Saturday morning. He had no more seizures on Saturday or Sunday or for 4 more months. No seizures.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so for people that are completely new to that, how would you dose a child? Like maybe some people might not know that in here. I was just going to maybe share that a little bit.
Dosing is a really funny thing. To keep it really simple, you start.
How does Silas take it? I guess is what I'm saying. What form? How do they? They don't obviously smoke a joint, I'm just
sublingual.
saying.
A sublingual formulation, a high potency, full extract cannabis oil, FECO, FECO oil, titrated into mid-chain triglyceride oil. And we measure the amount of MCT oil, we measure the amount of cannabis oil so that we know the approximate milligrams per milliliter of the oil that we're offering to him. And Forrest gives it to him under the tongue, typically. Under the tongue. And Silas was first diagnosed. He had his first seizure, I think, when he was 4 years old. And by the time he was 5 years old, they were so bad that the doctors were saying, "We don't think your child will make it till he's 10." Well, he's almost 12 now. So
Wow.
We're doing good on that front. But let's see, we're doing good on that front. But yeah, Silas has now gone into puberty, and so his needs have changed. I'll get back to
is his amounts changing that he's needing then? Are they changing and adapting maybe with hormonal?
Yeah, I think the hormone, we don't know, but
just speculating, right?
Some of the doctors, and I remember what it was like when I went into puberty, still, all these years later.
No.
So I can imagine I can imagine that the puberty has something to do with their current predicament. But yeah, right now it's not as bad as it was when they first saw a big relief, but he's seizing pretty bad these days. And I brought up dosing because, we always want to start with a low dose and go slow on increasing it, especially with epilepsy. It takes a while for the cannabinoids to build up sufficiently in the bloodstream to start affecting the entire body. And Forrest usually goes a week after starting a new version of cannabis preparation and or new dosing before he changes the dose or changes the preparation. Other families have different approaches. But basically, we really encourage folks to start off. And by a low dose, it might be as small as 0.5 milligram of cannabinoids per pound of body weight. So if your child weighs 100 pounds, you might get them a total of 50 milligrams over the course of a day. I know at one point when they were seeing good relief, Silas was taking almost 600 milligrams total of CBD and THC together over the course of a day. And that would be 4 to 5 times a day. And then potentially a larger dose at night to aid with sleeping and a slightly different preparation. Basically every child is different. What we usually do is there's an intake process involved in trying to understand what other pharmaceutical drugs the child might be on. And because there are drug interactions that happen with CBD that can be very problematic, especially some of the seizure medications. And then, it's literally almost like throwing spaghetti against the wall. We're learning a little more with each person that we do this with, but we found some cultivars seem to work better than others. And we usually start with something that has CBD and THC together. And then if for some reason or another the child's not responding well, we'll go in the direction of increasing one or the other of the cannabinoids. Usually a family will start off with a fairly small batch of the preparation as a test to see how it helps, if it helps, and how they respond. And we ask them to keep a journal of what they're doing, what dose they're giving, what response they're seeing, what the child is eating, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's all trying to build a picture of when we find something that's working, now we can repeat it. And we've had some success with that model. The real challenge, again, in the legalization thing, the real challenge is we had a pretty vigorous network of people who were growing out these plants that we had found that were of benefit and then donating them to us. And we had manufacturers that would do the extractions and formulators who would do the preparations. And we had people working fundraisers to help pay for packaging and shipping and all of the stuff that was going on. And it all ended January 9th, 2019 was the last day that Caladrius could do that work legally. And we did everything we could last year to get a bill passed in the state legislature, Senate Bill 829, carried by Senator Wiener, passed the House and the Senate in California by resounding majorities of both parties. And Governor Brown vetoed it on the very last day that it was on his desk. And that bill would have created a license type that would have allowed compassionate use or charity work with cannabis in California's marketplace. But he vetoed it. So now those activities, and we're not the only folks that do this kind of work in California. There are many entities that do it. We've kind of taken on a pretty organized version and a very, very challenged group of patients. I will say that. When we closed down, we were actively working with 140 families. We did what we could to put together. Pardon me. We did what we could.
It's okay if you want to take a minute. It's okay, Wade.
Yeah.
Wow, that's like
the thing is, the need doesn't go away.
just because our opportunity to help these people has ended, the need did not go away. And I know some of these families, that's the thing. And it's messed up that, what we did, we pulled on everybody we could, asked for help from all kinds of people to put together formulations in the time that was left, and sent out as much as we could to as many of those families as we could before the deadline. And most of them are fixed up for this coming year if their needs don't change. But not all of them. And of course, sometimes these kids' needs change. So, it's kind of a struggle at the moment. Because I know some of those families, we might be looking at children dying. I mean, that's messed up, but it's true. So.
That is really messed up, man. Really messed up.
Yeah. Anyway, we have a bill in the Senate, Senate Bill 34, again carried by Mr. Weiner. We very much appreciate his help. That would create a new license type. We've begun conversation with the local authorities here in Nevada County, trying to get them to create a niche in our cannabis ordinance that would allow charity activity. But it's going to be a big ask because it requires all of those things that are involved in everything from the nursery all the way through to a dispensary. And the only kind of licensure allowed in Nevada County is cultivation. So, but we're working on it. In my lifetime, most of my life, you could go to jail for having a joint. And that has changed. I got to own that part of this,
Cheers to that, Wade. Exactly.
Yeah.
But did you ever think that it would be legal, or how soon in your lifetime what would you think would be happening? And one more question. Can you hear Steve? Take a test for just a minute.
Hear me?
Mhm.
Okay.
I
Okay.
cannot hear Steve.
You can't. He cannot
No.
hear you. Okay.
All right.
Do you want to jump out and come back real quick, Wade?
I'll do that. Yeah.
Okay. We're really having difficulties tonight. Excuse us, guys, everybody. Give a minute. Have a dab or a toke or a cheers, everybody. Hope you're all puffing on something good tonight.
Can you guys hear me or no?
I can totally hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Wade. It's on Wade's end. He can't.
Hopefully you can hear me now. Maybe not.
Still can't hear Steve. This is.
Oh no, he still can't hear you. It's
How do I
How about
change
now?
that?
It's a different microphone. Can you hear me now?
no, because we can hear you. Steve, can
Well,
you
I
jump
can
out and
try.
come back?
Yeah.
Okay, try that.
Hold on. I just need
Steve's
to
gonna-
load it up in a second.
Okay.
window first.
Let him try. Okay, cheers, everybody. Take a quick break. Everybody get a drink. It's getting pretty heavy in here, and we do need to be thankful for how long it has come a long ways. And we are very thankful that I'm able even to grow medically in Washington. So absolutely.
Yeah. Are you there, Steve?
I think he's,
Give me 2 seconds.
No.
no, still working on it.
Hopefully this doesn't crash. Here we go.
We were having this trouble. We tried to do
All right.
Hash Church
Test,
last
test,
weekend and had the same problem.
Can you hear him now?
test, test, test.
No.
Oh my gosh, he still can't hear you.
Okay, well, maybe I can.
Okay, I'll relay
How
questions.
about now?
Or you can
Yeah,
put
just relay questions to him and we'll just do
okay.
it that way.
Sorry, guys. We'll
Yeah,
figure it out.
apologize for the technical issues. We will figure out what is going on.
So crazy.
Let me jump in again and see if I can.
I don't think it's on his end.
I think it
I
might
think
be,
it's
dude.
something to do with. I'm not sure. Could be his browser. Who knows?
Hangouts does some weird stuff.
Hangouts every now and then. Next wiggy. Test, test, test.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
Nothing. Can't hear me.
You
Hello?
can't hear him.
Okay.
Still
well, it's-
not.
we can relay it.
That's messed up.
So
Are
Okay.
you, maybe he could
I'll
type the
relay
questions or
question,
relay them?
or-
Yeah.
I'll relay him. Go ahead.
So I apologize that we'll have to repeat it, but that's fine. We'll make it work. We'll get through this together. Sorry.
Or type them. You can type them in the chat and you can read it.
Is there anything?
Yeah, that would work.
Is there different methods that he's found or that would increase CBD or increase THC? I know if you have, or I've been told that UVB increases THC over CBD. Can he talk on other things?
Is there any thing that could increase or decrease CBD or THC and any different methods, growing lights, styles, anything that you've come up with or heard of? He's heard of the lights doing things.
Yes, particularly if you're working indoors, which I did for a bunch of years. The spectrum of light that you are using can have quite an effect on the plants. Let me see, it's been a number of years here. Yeah, in the nursery for the mother plants and new babies, I used to use lighting that was in the 4.6 to 6.2 thousand Kelvin, which is in between high pressure sodium and UV light. It's kind of like midday sun, if you will. In flowering, I'd use 3,000 Kelvin, high pressure sodium type frequencies. And I found that there are some cultivars that will cause them to stretch and run. I remember Trainwreck would do that. And I found that by mixing some of that mid-range lighting into the lighting that I was offering to Trainwreck, to name one, that would slow its rapid growth. In terms of the cannabinoids profile that I saw coming out, I'm sure that there's ways to play with that, because if you look at how the frequency of sunlight that hits the earth changes over the growing season that cannabis usually enjoys outdoors, it's different frequencies in June than it is in September. So I would guess that the cannabis plant is genetically geared to respond to the different frequencies that are appropriate for the different life stages that she has as she's evolving. And then a couple of other things about lighting. I found that in the last couple of weeks of flowering, in addition to water only for all of the plants, I gave them significant increase in 10,000 Kelvin, which is UVA and UVB light, which enhanced trichome production pretty substantially. There for a little while, the dispensaries were kind of doing a double take when I would set one of our pounds on the table for them to look at. They would say, you know, we don't buy anything less than a pound. And I'd say, well, put it on a scale. And it would weigh a pound. And they'd say, you got rocks in here or what? And I'd say, well, trichomes are heavy. Plant material's not so heavy. It's the trichomes that actually have weight. And if you look at those flowers, you'll see why that pound's so small. And yeah, when we first started doing the 10,000 Kelvin thing over Harliquin, I remember the trichomes would grow like a second cap on top of the first trichome. It was just crazy how they would fill out.
Wow. So how later did you put it in? Did you add those lights? Or
if it was an 8-week plant, I'd put the high frequency bulbs in beginning of week 6. So the last 2 weeks or so of flowering. And I know I've had conversation with people about doing period of darkness just before harvest and some other things, but generally speaking, I really look to how nature does things with the plant. I feel like if you're willing to just really look at what does the plant deal with over the course of its life in terms of water, in terms of nutrients in the soil, in terms of the sunlight that comes on it, Um, that's the guide to me for indoor cultivation or outdoor cultivation is to learn to work with nature, to learn to work with the genetics that are in the plant. She evolved in the soil. She evolved under the sun. She evolved with water, not nutrients in liquid form. In rich soil was where she was happiest. So that's why the dragonfly earth thing makes so much sense to me. It's all about making your own inputs, and to me that's about observing nature and recognizing how nature goes about creating beneficial inputs for the things that flourish in nature. And because we're creative folk, you can learn how to enhance that thing that nature does so beautifully in our garden spaces and in the plants that we want to work with. And that's, to me, that's where the beautiful part of cannabis really comes into play, is when you provide everything that the plant needs, she fully expresses the potential. It's not unlike children, not to anthropomorphize the plant like people, but if you treat a child, feed them well and read to them, and I have my pictures of how to do all these things, but you can get pretty dramatic results compared to what's typical for a family where both parents are drug addicted and abusive with each other and their children, and the nightmare scenarios that so many people live with. And meantime, if you take that same conversation and put it to the plant, is the plant overcrowded, overfed, under poor lighting, not in contact with the ground, cramped in a little basement, hidden from, it's
not very
that's
well
one
made.
kind of scenario for how cannabis can be. And then is it in the ground, in mature, rich soil, full of everything the plant needs and wants, getting all the water and wants and needs at the right time, tended by people who love her and respect what she's doing for us?
Exactly.
I mean, those are two different end results, in my opinion, and my experience.
Yeah.
Having done both of them.
I didn't want to go away from that question back. You talked about how the lights can change it and bring out the CBD. What about like a soil? Have you found any particular growing style in a soil, a medium, a pH, or anything like that?
Yeah, I think that I've heard, I haven't seen this for myself, but some of the folks I know who are working with hemp have learned to be very careful about how much nitrogen they give their hemp plants early in their grow cycle. They're getting a lot of THC showing up. Is it related to nitrogen? They seem to think so. I don't know. I do know that as the soil, in working with farmers and in working in the soil here on our farm, what I found, as you build the biological diversity in the soil, you're going to start seeing better cannabinoid profiles and better terpene profiles. The genetics of the plant dictate what cannabinoids and terpenes are going to be present. The environment, the nutrients profile, the situation the plant finds itself in is going to determine the quantity and quality, in my opinion, again, the quantity and quality of those cannabinoids and terpenes that the plant is making for us.
Definitely.
That's my experience. And I tried really hard when I was working indoors to get the right soil mix and the right nutrients. Hell, it was a lot of work to get the water right. I mean, if you're trying to do biology in soil and you're using city water that you buy through a meter, you're killing all your biology, because that water comes with chloramine or chlorine in it that's supposed to kill biology. That's why it's in there. And the law requires them to put it in the water. And so I'd go through a whole thing with compost teas and bokashi ferments.
So by just taking their water, like a lot of people think they can take their water, let it sit on the counter, and then it's okay to use the next day. That's not true?
That's true if your local water agency uses chlorine. Chlorine off gases out of water pretty readily, especially if you put an air stone in it.
Mhm.
Chloramine, not so much. Chloramine
So how would
is
people
very
know
difficult
that?
to
How
get.
would they
You
find
can
that
ask
information out?
the people who sell you water.
Okay.
They'll tell you what they put in
So
it.
like their local city, your city would know, or okay.
Whoever you send your water bill to has a customer service center or a website. And if you go there and ask them, what do you do to ensure our water is safe? That's the question they're looking for. And they'll tell you very proudly, oh, we use chloramine at this number of parts per million. And if it's chloramine, no, you can't get it out with an air stone or sitting on the counter or anything else. What I've found is you can do reverse osmosis, which I'm not a big fan of because it uses electricity, it creates a waste stream, and you've got pure water, which is not anything you find in nature. What I went in the direction of was make the water dirty. I did bokashi and EMs, a bunch of early ferments that you could do indoors with compost and teas and whatnot. And I would make bags of things. I'd get 100-gallon reservoir of fresh water out of the tap. And I had a little, I'll get all esoteric on you in it here for a second.
That should be a shirt, I'm thinking. Hashtag make your water dirty. What was it?
Yeah, no, that's a great one.
Make your water dirty.
The first batch, or even two sometimes, that I'd put into the reservoir, nothing would happen. And basically the chloramine would kill the biology that I'd put in there. And I'd pull that out, put it back into the compost pile, put a new batch in. And when I started seeing foam on the water, then I knew the chloramine had been used up. Nice. And now I had live water. And that would enhance the biology that I was trying to create in the soil that I was in the plants at that point. And I was doing all this stuff with lighting, and I was trying to learn integrated pest management indoors, which is a huge nightmare, to say the least. Because, what I found is outdoors, integrated pest management is a lot easier if you have a diverse garden. All kinds of host plants that your friends that are bugs can come and hang out in, so that when your predators show up, you have allies in the battle, if you will. And the other thing about integrated pest management is plants that are stressed are vulnerable to pests.
Yeah.
And most plants, most cannabis gardens I've ever walked in, and I mean, much love, much respect to everybody that does this work, but way too many folks overwater and overfeed their plants. And it stresses their plants, and it makes them vulnerable to bugs and disease. And that's all about, again, I think, the bottom line. You want the most you can get from this effort you're putting in. And so you've been told, oh, this feed is really good. This will make your plants grow faster, bigger, harder, stronger buds, et cetera, et cetera. And usually my experience is, when I look at a garden where disease is broken out or pests are running rampant, the soil is waterlogged. And when you talk to them about nutrients, they're feeding them fast and furious. And I think it's, again, to anthropomorphize the plants, if you think of them like people, if you crowd people together and overfeed them, what are you going to get pretty quickly is a bunch of sick people that are getting each other sick. And it's kind of that way with plants. That's my experience.
Sick and unhappy. Exactly. All right. So Steve had another question. So what advice would you have if someone was just finding out about their child for treatment? Let's see, where am I at?
Thank you.
If someone was just finding out about the CBD medicine and considering it for themselves to treat their child, and they were scared, what advice would you have?
Please repeat that, Tara.
Sorry, I murdered it.
No. Here's the thing.
I'm trying to read what the question was.
I understand.
Basically, Steve was asking what is
Basically, just give some advice about if they're just finding out how they would find out if CBD was for their child and how they would go about treating it. Some advice about that.
Well, if there's a dispensary in their area and they can go into that dispensary to get something for their child, I'd recommend starting off with a formulation like I was describing, a full spectrum or full extract cannabis oil in olive oil or in MCT oil. I like MCT because it's
MCT. What does that stand for? In case someone doesn't know.
Mid-chain triglyceride oil. It's fractionated coconut oil.
Okay, that's what I thought it was.
The part of coconut oil that stays liquid at room temperature.
Exactly.
It has a nice taste.
And it's stable for a long time, and it doesn't go bad. It's good for a long time. I've used it in cosmetics. Yeah.
So here in California, you can go into a dispensary and you can find what I would look for is a preparation that might have, say, 250 milligrams of CBD and 150 milligrams of THC in the same bottle for a total of 400 milligrams. And in that kind of a preparation, if it was a 30 milliliter bottle, each milliliter or dropper full would have about 10 milligrams of CBD and about 6 milligrams of THC. So for a child who was, let's just say 40 pounds, I might start off with even a couple of drops for the first couple of doses and do that, do it first thing in the morning. You could put it on food. If the child is open to it, putting it under the tongue is the best for seizure disorders, because there's a whole set of tissues that go from the mouth right to the base of the brain. It's why toothaches hurt so bad. There's all kinds of nerves, and the sinuses are right there. And the cannabis preparations can have a strong taste. So you want to be sensitive to that with a child. You don't want to turn them off to the taste of it.
And kids are very sensitive to taste, much more than adults.
And again, start off with literally even a few drops of something like that and see how it goes for the first day or two. And if you're not seeing any difference or you're not seeing much change, try increasing it, maybe to as much as even a quarter of a dropper full, which would be like 6 or 8 drops. And now you're talking, you know, if a milliliter has 10 milligrams of CBD, a quarter of a milliliter would have 2.5 or 3 milligrams of CBD. And for a 40-pound child, you can see that's a very small dose. But we have seen benefit at that small of a dose. And if you can find that small of a dose and it's working for your child, then a 30 milliliter bottle is a month's supply. Because you take a quarter of a dropper 4 times a day, that's a dropper full each day. Each dropper is a milliliter, 30 milliliters, 30 days. That's a beautiful find when it happens like that. If
and
you're not yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll finish.
I was going to say, if you're not in California, that's a whole nother conversation. I can't really recommend most of the CBD preparations that are available online.
That's what I was just going to ask you.
Way too many of, I mean, what's possible there should be hugely beneficial. What's reality is a whole nother story. Way too many of the products that are available online right now, if you take them to an analytical lab for testing, this actually in Southern California, there's thousands of dispensaries in the urban area of the greater Los Angeles, San Diego area, selling CBD products. And one of the local distributors down there went into 20 of those different shops and bought 20 different products and took them to an analytical lab. And every one of those 20 products failed for one of 3 things. One, had no CBD in it at all. 2,
it had CBD and THC in it, or 3, it had contaminants that it would not pass if it was in the cannabis realm, because cannabis realm for testing is very strict. And this stuff had pesticides in it and heavy metals, and I don't remember what the other thing was that they were talking about.
And this is at a dispensary or out of local store?
No, this is out of stores that are
Out of store. Okay.
If you go into a dispensary today in California, the products that they sell are in fact tested clean,
Okay.
and will be what they say on the label. Again,
If you go into a registered dispensary, right now, I hear there's quite a lot of little underground dispensaries popping up. You got to watch out for. I hear also on Instagram, I see fake packaging is going on. There is a lot of stuff out there, guys. Be aware.
Yeah, I think it really makes sense to develop, if you have need for cannabis and cannot grow your own and make your own formulations for yourself or your family, it makes sense at the very least to find a farmer that you trust.
Know your farmer.
Know your farmer. There are many, many, many people in this work who are trying to do the very best version of this work they can. And part of why cannabis has the culture that it does is many of us who have worked with the plant over the years have, through our own need or through the need of someone that we love, realized the potential medical benefit of cannabis and seen it work. So, yeah. I see a question here about, what did he say for someone finding out about CBD?
Yeah, that was the one I was trying to ask you the question on earlier. About just the children to any benefit of asking that. So yeah, so basically if they don't live in a legal state that they can't go down to the dispensary, they basically can't buy it anywhere.
Well, yeah, it's
sad.
Yeah, what's true is in many states in the country, prohibition is still fully in effect, and you can go to prison for growing this plant. And that's just so wrong, and will be fixed someday. And hopefully one of these days, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with hemp and CBD. It's kind of an interesting thing. The FDA is going to, the FDA is calling it a drug now. And you can't put drugs in foods or drinks or anything else that can be consumed by people. It's got to go through a drugstore and all of this madness. But if you're in a state that isn't legal and you happen to know someone who, despite local law, does grow, and that's how it's always been, there are people who do this work. A few of them, if you ask them about CBD plants, more and more they are available. They're getting easier and easier to find, both seeds and cuttings. And ask someone to grow a plant for you, offer them some funds to grow it, and ask them to grow it with respect for the end user about using pesticides or fungicides or anything systemic or chemical salts for fertilizers. I have a whole list.
Absolutely.
Of things.
Okay, so I see a question in chat. So about blending MCT and longer chain fats like safflower oil or emulsifying it to make it any quick acting preparations or anything like that. Any insight on different type of oils you can mix it with, basically?
Well, it depends on what we would be trying to use the formulation for. If it was, for example, to be applied to the skin.
Would it last longer, or would it be any quick acting? I think that was any quicker acting preparations. I think that was what they were asking.
It's a great question. I don't know that I know the answer to that. We worked with a number of different oils as carrier oils for the full extract cannabis oil, and settled on MCT because
most people liked it compared to olive oil, for example, or safflower oil or canola oil, or and basically all of those oils would work. It was more a question of
the stability, I think, and but yeah, how long it, yeah, it doesn't go rancid. It's just really super stable. It doesn't taste bad. It's like,
it's not GMO.
Yes.
Another big one for some of our families.
Yes.
And in terms of how quick it reacts, that's a great question, because depending on how you ingest cannabis, you get really different response times. In terms of
don't they
onset.
talk about using like lectin when you cook with
Lecithin.
it, and lecithin? Thank you. What? How do you say that again? I always say it wrong.
Lecithin is how I say it.
Yes.
I think that's how it's said. And yeah, lecithin helps with uptake of cannabinoids if you're eating them, for example.
But this wouldn't be anything for sublingual. This would only be for eating.
You could use it. You could use it. We really found that MCT and full spectrum oils have been really good, has given us good results. I'll say it like that. I don't pretend to know everything in this work by any means.
It's working, so I'm not going to mess with it.
I'm totally open to suggestions that might work. I tend to be pretty conservative, though, because I don't want to take a chance on harming the end user. Again, I know some of these.
No, because these are children. You're not just, they're not just lab rats you're testing on. So yeah, I get that. Like, no, I totally like. Yeah. If it's working, you're gonna use it. Sorry, Steve. Go ahead.
Ask him about his work with lactobacillus. I know he's worked a lot with different lab serums.
How about your work with lactobacillus?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, lactobacillus, one of the simplest ferments, and use it. I use it mostly on the soil. I don't. My rules for cannabis myself are, for the most part, unless there's an issue, the only thing I put on the plant surfaces itself, the above ground surfaces, is water. And lactobacillus is one of the things that I've used in the past on plant surfaces as well as in the soil. I much prefer it in compost. I give it to our dogs. I give it to our chickens. I give it to our fruit trees in the soil.
I have not made it yet.
It's one of the simplest ones, and it's really lovely.
Well, look, I've got my brown sugar right here. I'm just getting ready to make my first ferment. So here we go.
Yeah, no, plant ferments and soil biology cultivation are some of my favorite parts of the gardening work that goes on over the course of the year. We like, one of the things that we like to do, people will love this. If you have weeping willow growing on your property, or have access to weeping willow
down the road.
If you take fresh ends of weeping willow branches and stick them in the ground, they grow, right? True that. Well, if you take those same tips of willow branches and put them in water for a few days, you get a lovely little ferment that is very rich in the kind of things that plants need for rooting.
For cloning, right? Yeah.
Those kind of things. I love another favorite one is when I see a plant flagging in the garden, there's a couple of different approaches you can take. You can take a soil culture from a plant that's flourishing in the same garden. And there you're capturing some of the microbiology that's happening in the soil, and make a liqueur from that culture and then apply it to the soil under a plant that's struggling. And often I see very nice results from that within a week or two of application.
Very cool.
And I think that some of what's going on there is that a plant that's flourishing in the garden, particularly if they're identical cuttings, for example, if you got one that's flourishing and one that's not, take some soil biology, and that's just cook some white rice, put it in a wooden box, little wooden box, cover it with a cloth, turn it upside down on the soil underneath the plant that's flourishing, put a little rock on top of it to keep the critters out. Come back a week later, and you'll find all kinds of interesting colored patterns of growth happening on the cloth and in the rice. Take that rice and water and box, take that cloth, rice, and box to a bucket of live water, non-chlorinated water, rinse the whole thing out into the water, strain the solids off, offer that to a compost pile, feed the water some raw sugar. You got it already in hand, Tara. And then you have a biology capture of the fungus and bacteria that are flourishing in the soil of a plant that's flourishing in your garden. Now you take that liqueur and offer it to the soil of the plant that's struggling and watch what happens.
Now, is that similar to IMO?
I'm not, tell me what IMO is.
Okay, so all these terminology, this cannabis stuff. So they're talking about it in chat. So isn't IMO? I can't remember all the.
It is basically.
So indigenous microorganisms.
Indigenous microorganism. So they do take
Oh
it.
yeah, indigenous microorganisms. Yes.
Yes,
That's
okay.
the term.
Okay. I actually have some. Josh gave me some. So I actually have some. So I'm going to start using that. And he also gave me the calcium one.
Well, I love the product idea, but again, the heart of DEM is make your own.
Well, exactly. But I have
that.
to start with, right? So
Here's the thing. What I'm suggesting, here's from my point of view, again, I look to nature for my guidance. The biology that is flourishing on your land is the biology that's appropriate for your soil. And so what I do is, you don't have to do it in your garden. I mean, if you're trying to help a struggling plant, do it. But you can also just look around your property or your land or your neighbor's land and look for a place where nature is just busting out. You know what I'm talking about. There are spots you can tell things are very happy there. And if you go to that spot and you dig in and start getting into the soil and looking at what's going on, you're going to find first there's layers of green live growth all happening, going on. But as you get in, you start seeing layers of decaying material. And then eventually you get down to this transition where it starts becoming soil. And if you open that spot up and you drop that box in there, now you're going to capture the soil biology that helps plants flourish in your soil, as versus bringing biology from someplace else that might be right for your soil, but might not be.
Okay, so thoughts on mammoth pea?
I'm sorry?
Mammoth pea.
Yes.
Oh, any thoughts on that? Like
that's a brand, that's a product,
other
right?
product and microbes and stuff like that. Yeah, what is your thoughts on that?
Well, here's the thing. I know there's folks out there that are doing really wonderful work, providing products for folks that help in this process. I feel like if you are in a situation where you have to buy the things that you need to make your garden work, just like get to know your farmer, get to know your supplier, and ask them real questions. Like if you're buying anything in a jug or a bag, look at the active ingredients, and then almost always there's this line that says inert ingredients, X percentage. Well, what the hell does that mean? I'm sorry, it might be inert for your purposes, but is it inert for mine? I don't know. And that's the conservative in me. When you go into a grow store, the person you're talking to, it's their job to sell the products that are on the shelf.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. That's their job. Yeah. And some of those products can be of benefit in our work. There's no question about that. But I mean, let's just talk about a nutrient that I used to use a lot of, bat guano. Before I got into the DEM Pure certification thing, I at some point, you know, really looked at a bag of bat guano sitting on a shelf in the grocery store and thought about what had to happen someplace else for that bag to be sitting there on that shelf. And if you go back to the beginning, someplace, a whole bunch of bats are living in a cave, and meantime, people are coming in with machines to scrape up what's on the floor. And there's definitely some weirdness there in my heart. And then those machines are, yeah, that's my beloved passing by.
She's always welcome to sit down and have a smoke too.
Do you want to sit in? No, she's going to pass.
Okay, well, she's always welcome.
Oh, she's a genius. It's we're a pretty amazing couple there. Anyway, yeah, what has to happen for that bat guano to be on the shelf? And I mean, at some point the guano came out of the cave, however that happened. And again, that hurts my heart just thinking about it. But then it probably got transported by a truck. There's environmental impact, to a factory where it was bagged up, and then another truck took it to a ship, probably, and it was carted across the ocean to another dock where another truck picked it up and then carried it to another place that carried it to another place. And now it's sitting on the shelf there for 40 pounds. They want $80. Well, that's not very much money. And there's a lot of benefit in that bag of bat guano, except is $80 really the price of that when you look at everything that happens along the way? And the thing is, there's many folks right here in California who are, you know, they're doing fish emulsions, and they're doing the mammoth pea, I think you called it, and I've heard of them. I just met a guy the other day doing really good work called he's the Soil King, and I really love the things he's doing. I might try and get him in the DEM family.
Actually, I think he did some amazing work for the community. I think he's a very respectful guy, from what I heard.
No, I like Patrick quite a bit. But yeah, I just met him this past Sunday. To come back to where part of why DEM Pure is so important to me, or why it's meaningful to me, is that as I understand the practices and protocols that are expected of a DEM Pure farmer, your intention is to create your own inputs. And if you cannot create your own inputs, to work locally with those around you in your community to source the inputs that could be used in your garden. And part of that is, for me, I came to that because in making medicine, as I came to know more and more people who actually needed medicine and realized how important purity was, I realized I can't go to a store and buy a bag of something because I don't really know exactly everything that's in it. Right here on my land, I know everything that's here. We don't bring anything here. Nature's doing its thing, and we're paying attention and taking advantage of what she's offering and trying to enhance what she's accomplishing is really the goal. So, you know, indigenous microorganisms is one of the closed loop systems we practice. We do vermiculture. I had a worm box when I was back in the city in San Francisco, living in a little apartment, had a worm box under the kitchen sink. Now I have a 4x4 by 4 foot tall worm box that stays real busy.
Very cool.
We have 3 different style composting operations going, and one of them makes about 5 or 6 cubic yards a month.
Really, do you want to go ahead and talk about those?
That one, the one that produces that much quantity, we in our county, there's a lot of trees. And there's a lot of concern about fire danger. So a lot of people prune their trees, and they have people come and do it, and they make wood chips. And the only place you can dump wood chips if your customer doesn't want them, and you're a tree guy, is our county dump, which is about 45 minutes from where I live. And meantime, I live in a pretty nice part of the county, and a lot of people take care of their property. So I set up a scenario where the wood chip guys could dump their wood chips. So we get truckloads of wood chips delivered here to the farm, and then we mix into the wood chips green manures, stuff that we grow, cover crops. Instead of chop and drop, we'll chop and gather. Add that to the compost pile along with manure from horses, goats, and chickens. And then you roll that over, and over a period of a couple of months, it turns from manures and wood chips into really beautiful black soil. I just posted to Instagram a couple days ago at House of Harliquin a little short video. I'm learning how to do Instagram just like in the last couple of weeks, by the way.
Oh, good job. I'm still learning myself, and I've been trying to do it for a year, and I still suck at it. So yeah, good
Yeah,
job.
no, I'm one of my hashtags that I use is learning IG.
All right. Okay, well, make sure you follow Wade, you guys, and make sure to keep up on his Instagram.
I posted a video just the other day about a compost pile, a brand new one that we just built from some mature wood chips, a couple years old wood chips. So they're already well on their way to being mostly fungus. And meantime, by adding the manures from the animals and the green manures from our crops, we get the bacterial activity mixed into the fungal activity with the chips. And that combination, of course, is what we're looking for in the soil food web. And so, yeah, that's one of our composting operations. And we have access to enough of those manures and enough wood chips that, yeah, we make, like I said, 5 or 6 yards a month, every month throughout the year. And that gets spread on our neighbor's 7-acre farm and our 4-acre farm. And we have friends who drop in with pickup trucks, and we use the tractor to load them up, and they go off with a big smile on their face.
Yeah, you'd be a good neighbor.
Yeah, no, we're having fun here. We also do a kitchen compost, which is adjacent to our main garden. All of the garden waste goes into that compost pile, along with all the kitchen waste from our 2 households here on the farm, and some of our chicken manure goes into that compost pile. And there's 2 of those, and they are each, when they're full, about I don't want to exaggerate, they're between 4 and 6 cubic yards when they're full. They're made out of pallets. They're stood on their sides and screwed together, and wire to keep rats and whatnot out. But we keep those pretty busy. It takes us about a year to fill one up. And then while the other one's filling up, the first one's maturing and getting ready to use. And when the second one's full, then we empty the first one into the garden or into our containers or to our flower beds or to our fruit trees or nut trees, or yeah, like that.
Very cool. I'm just starting all that. So putting that question in the chat, did you take care of that one? And should I also ask? They were talking about fermented fruit juice. Was there any that you choose over others? And Potent kind of said something in the chat. I don't know if you wanted to say it out loud, or Potent, or.
Well, is Wade using?
Yeah, I would welcome. I've not done much fermentations with fruit juices.
Okay, he said he had done. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of fermented soursop. That's probably the best one. At least in Jamaica, it seemed to make the biggest difference.
Let's see here.
And then fermented plums and fermented berries.
We've got conversation about.
So,
Go ahead.
Potent said that he liked the soursop and plums and berries is what he likes to ferment with. That's what you didn't hear him saying.
And he uses that ferment for.
Oh, those are just different ferments for finishing.
Just different ferments for finishing up. In flour, I think, is mainly when they use
offering them to the soil, or as a foliar feed.
Probably a foliar feed for potassium.
No foliar feed.
Okay.
No, it's only.
You're not foliar feeding your fermented fruit.
It's only goes into the ground, I think, tea, right? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's only T. It's a T. Another T. Another acronym that I have to figure out.
Yeah, I want to say about foliar feeding.
Oh yes, foliar feeding. Yes, I'd like to hear about that.
One of the things that I have found, I'll say it like that. Again, this is just my opinion. When you harvest the cannabis plant, when you cut her down, you capture all of the compounds, all of the sap, the juice, if you will, that's in that plant and on the plant's surfaces, right? And one of the things I used to do when I was getting ready to harvest, to make sure, back when I was using nutrients and or foliar feeds or any of those kind of things, I would take a leaf, a sun leaf off the plant and chew on the stem and taste it. And when you do that, if a plant has been getting nutrients, you will taste the nutrients. If, on the other hand, your plant is growing in mature soil where you haven't had to give it nutrients, but only offered it water, when you chew on a stem, it tastes like the plant smells and nothing else. And what I have found is that foliar feeds, whether it's on the plant surfaces itself or is actually drawn into the cellular structures of the plant and held there, they lend a flavor. And a part of my thing about the cannabis plant and purity is to, when you actually come to that moment of harvest and you capture the plant and all that chemistry, it comes with a lot of water and it comes with whatever other compounds are running around in the vital juice, if you will, the sap of the plant. And if there's nutrients in there, those nutrients don't go away in the curing process. They don't go away in the drying process. They're still in the cellular structures of the plant. And so if you're smoking it, you're going to taste that. And I think when you talk about smoking flowers, if you're smoking flowers and they're doing anything other than leaving a nice gray ash, and when you light the smoke and it just burns and burns and burns, and yeah, if you put it down, it'll go out eventually. But if you have to keep relighting it, you're smoking things other than cannabis. And if your ash is black, you're smoking things other than cannabis. And that's part of why so much cannabis doesn't taste like it smells, is some of those other things that are going on. One of the reasons I think curing is really important if you're going to smoke flowers is the cannabis plant, when it's doing photosynthesis, it's making sugars. And those sugars are in the plant when you harvest it. They're right there all through. That's why when you chew on the stem of a leaf, it's sweet and it tastes like the plant smells. But those sugars, if you can dry cannabis in a few minutes right off the plant, you can take a bud that's fresh and put it in a microwave oven and dry it dry enough to smoke it in a couple of minutes. But it will be the nastiest smoke you ever had. And a lot of why that is all you did was drive the moisture off. All the sugar that's in the plant is still there. And if you've ever cooked with sugar and burned it, you stunk up the whole kitchen and probably ruined the pan. And what you had was a black, nasty mess, which is why poorly cured cannabis burns with a black ash and it doesn't smell good or taste like it smells. But nutrients, and again, see that foliar feeding thing. I think that foliar feeding nutrients can have benefit if your soil is deficient in those nutrients. But to use extra nutrients in a foliar feed to harden buds or to promote faster growth or any of those kind of things, I'm not totally opposed to it. I'm conservative and don't do it myself because I don't know for a fact that a ferment I made is going to be free of something that might harm my end user. That's what it really boils down to. I keep thinking about my end user.
Yeah, when in doubt, don't use it.
That's really my guiding principle, Tara, right there. So, but I do some foliar feeds, like a thing that I'll do. It's not really a feed. I'll make it's a biodynamic preparation of stinging nettle, comfrey, and horsetail. And you stir it the special way and blah, 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 blah. There's a bunch of things you do to it. But it's basically a fermented tea of stinging nettle, comfrey, and horsetail.
Yep.
And I will use that with a couple of drops of Dr. Bronner's baby soap to act as a surfactant so it sticks to the plant surfaces.
A wetting agent.
A wetting agent, yes, exactly, Richard. Or Roger, excuse me. Exactly, a wetting agent. And then what's nice about that preparation, and I noticed that it has two effects. One, it seems to energize the plants. It perks them up. They like it. I think my thinking or feeling about it is, in talking to the plants about it, is it's sort of like humans use vitamin C or elderberry syrup to perk themselves up when they feel a cold coming on. They kind of take it like that. It just helps them feel better. And meantime, the bugs, it's an irritant to them. It doesn't kill them, although some soap in water can dehydrate some bugs and that can kill them. But the stinging nettle and the horsetail both are irritants to them. And so they leave the plant. They don't like being on it, which is a little gentler than killing. And meantime, none of those three things are there in sufficient quantity for me to be concerned about the alkaloids in comfrey, for example, ending up from my ferment of comfrey leaf, ending up compromising the well-being of my end user.
Yeah, I like that idea. So what about diatomaceous earth and that in the same way?
Do you have to be careful with?
Again, I would use it on the soil or around a plant.
But never on the leaves or anything like that?
Well, here's the thing. If you use it on the leaves, it's going to be in your flowers.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes them really ugly.
Yeah.
I know that from personal experience.
Here.
That's good enough. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead, Steve. Steve was going to ask a question. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah.
So tell us more about this issue with comfrey and ferments. I haven't heard that before. So should we not use comfrey on cannabis?
Okay, so he wants to know about comfrey and cannabis and the issues. Should we not be using comfrey on cannabis?
No, I think it's fine. Comfrey is a wonderful plant. I use it. We grow it for, it's a great feedstock for our compost piles. I use it in various ferments. It's used in some of the biodynamic preparations. And the root the root and the leaf has many uses in traditional Western herbalism. I love it. The concern is that comfrey has certain alkaloids that, like, if you make a tea of comfrey and drink it, that can be a problem. I think it's hard on the liver and whatnot. And meantime, when we, again, out of an abundance of caution, again, it's a ferment of comfrey leaf, and there's not very much of it on the leaf surfaces. And our medicine makers are going for the oils, not the leaf. So I don't think there's much of that alkaloid left in the oil that I'm offering to these kids. But I wouldn't use comfrey, for example, as an active ingredient, if you will, in a preparation that would be hoping to help with bone healing, for example. You could make a cannabis preparation that could be applied topically that could include comfrey, but you wouldn't want to make one that would be ingested that included comfrey, because then those alkaloids would be present in sufficient quantity to potentially be a problem.
Very interesting.
Okay.
Hey, Dutch, welcome. Just welcome, Dutch Bloom. Hey, so just so anybody knows, whatever Potent is saying, Wade can't hear for some reason, so I'm trying to relay the questions. So that's what's going on if you guys are kind of confused, because he's asking a question and I have to repeat it. So sorry, everybody, but we're working through this tonight. So if you have any other questions, please throw them out in chat. How's everybody
I have
doing
a
today?
question. I got a question.
Go ahead, Dutch. Can you hear Dutch?
Hey, wait.
No.
Can you hear Wade?
You want me
hear
to
me?
kick out and see if I can come back in and maybe it'll work this time?
Let's try it one more time,
We've done
Wade.
it
Yeah,
4 times.
sorry.
Yeah, all right. I'll be right back.
Gosh.
Love you guys. This is fun.
We're
Dutch, can you-
trying.
Can you hear?
I can hear you, Dutch.
Yeah, I can hear Josh fine. It's
It's-
just Wade that's having issues.
Yeah, because I can hear everybody, and I can hear, and he can hear Tara and I.
Yeah, he can
can't
hear all.
you guys.
Yeah.
That's weird. I mean, we've had it one way or the other. It's never been like half and half like this, you know. Here's
Okay.
Wade back. Here.
Test.
I can
About
hear
that?
you.
Hello?
I
Hello?
heard Dutch, I think, or Steve.
Can you hear,
one of the
hear
other.
me?
Oh, no.
Can you hear me?
No.
Can you hear
Shit.
Josh? Say
All
something,
right.
Josh.
I'm going to try
Hey,
again.
No,
Can
they
you
can't
hear
hear you. He can't
But-
hear you.
You know what?
Yeah.
Just, we'll just relay it through Tara.
That's okay.
So
Go ahead, Dutch.
The question I have is, now I got to remember.
Oh, shit.
Oh,
Was it about
you were
teas
talking
and
about-
foliars?
You were talking about tasting the nutrients in plants.
Oh, tasting the nutrients in plants.
And I assume that it applies to organics and non-organics as well, having excess nutrients in the plants.
He assumes that it applies to organics and non-organics as well. If there's excess nutrients, no matter whether it's organic or non-organic, you're still going to taste it in the stem.
What do you do then follow up, what do you do in an organic situation to, if you're tasting it, to, you know, get to the point where you're actually tasting a clear, you know, clean plant and getting the flavor of the plant?
So to follow it up, what do you do to clean up that and quit having that taste if you're in an organic situation? Why are you getting it? Is that the question? Okay.
Hi, Dutch. What I always do, when you're in soil, it's hard to flush out nutrients. So what I work with, instead of adding a lot of amendments to the soil each year, is I've made a lasagna bed kind of thing. And I'll get back to how to flush out nutrients here in a second. But by making a lasagna bed, a stack of years of mulches, composts, etc., over time, the breakdown of all those constituents happens in a way that the roots of the plant climb out of the hole that we make when we put them in the ground. They climb out of that hole and find the sweet spot in those layers, and that's when they run out and find the nutrients they need. And my experience has been that because I'm not adding raw manures, for example, I don't taste raw manures. I have tasted chicken manure in cannabis plants by chewing on a stem.
Really?
So, yes. There was there was a smell that wasn't the plant. And when I thought about it, I asked them if they were using manures, and yeah, they just used chicken manure like a couple of weeks before I was chewing on one of their plant leaves. And yeah, I could taste it. So in terms of flushing, yeah, what you would, instead of overfeeding the plants early in their cycle so that all these nutrients are still in the soil, the plants haven't had a chance to take them up, you can do other companion plants in pots or in beds that can take up some of those nutrients. But really what I try for is to set up a scenario where I'm just watering. And if you're trying to flush things out, yeah, I would just water. And hopefully your soil drains well enough that you're not going to get problems with mold or mildew by overwatering. But as a general thing, once I can do this quite readily because my native soil is grossly abundant in potassium and phosphorus. My plants have no shortage of those compounds, those nutrients. So as soon as they start go into the ground, the only nutrients I add is a weak dilution of fish emulsion and kelp to get them started
into the soil. And then, like I said, they go and find that sweet layer and then they take off and they just get water. When folks are using amendments, I would suggest that certainly by the 4th week of flowering, I would be cutting back on any nutrients being added to your soil, and I'd be using just water. And that would be even for a 16-week plant. Because what's true is, especially, again, if your soil has potassium and phosphorus in it, you don't need more than what the plant's going to take on. And she's not going to force feed herself unless there's too much. If there's just nothing else going on, then abundant potassium, she's going to take up a lot of potassium. She's going to take up a lot of phosphorus. Whereas what's really going on, if you think about the soil food web and the exudates that these creatures are creating to exchange for the plant's sugars, we don't need to feed the soil. We don't need to feed those creatures. They are there feeding on the sugars of the plants. And way too often, I think things that are added to soil as plants are maturing actually discourages or even kills off the biology that's going on.
I think you hit something
Very
a
interesting.
lot of people don't seem to understand, and we were just talking about this the other night, but is that you can't, the plant's only going to take up what it wants to take up. And so no matter how much you cram in it or how strong a solution you put on it, it's still, so everything else is wasted. It's only going to take what it wants to take up, which is a very good point. Like you said, you got to do your soil testing, so you know what's in there. And then, all right, that's all I wanted to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you, Roger. That was great. Yes, exactly.
So, what about what about pH? So do you believe in pHing the water then before you're going to water outside growing organically?
Yeah, no, pH is really, really important in the chemistry of the soil and nutrient uptake. It's fascinating how nutrient uptake of micro and macronutrients changes with pH. And again, I got lucky, or I knew what I was doing, one or the other, when we bought our place, because we got really good soil. The native soil here in the forest that's on either side of our big garden, the soil there is 6.0. In our garden, it was 6.2. The water, we get raw irrigation water from this beautiful, the Nevada Irrigation District is many things, but one of the things it is a provider of sweet water from a canal that flows by our property. And yeah, the water that comes out of there is, it varies depending on the time of year and how much of it's snow melt and how much of it's just coming out of a reservoir. It varies between 5.8 and 6.2. So it's right in the sweet spot for nutrient uptake in cannabis. I just got lucky, maybe. And meantime, yeah, there are ways you can lower the pH of water. You got to be careful with, again, I like doing things that change the pH of the soil and then adding the water that you have. If your water comes out of a well and you have a water softener, take your water before the water softener, or sort out, because water softeners are salts that will kill your biology. Water is a really important thing for cannabis, or any garden for that matter, but particularly important for cannabis. And it really needs to be what I call live water. Water that encourages the biology and diversity of the soil that is really the root of good gardening. It's all happening in the roots. As above, so below.
So with back to the water then. So the pH, for some reason, I don't know why I was hearing this. I thought someone was saying that as long as your ground is all good and your microbes and everything's good, you should be able to put the water in there. I have 7.2 at that, and it should be able to take care of itself. And so you're saying I should actually add more stuff to the soil so that it can take care of it. What type of thing would you recommend for that then?
Well, if your water's 7.2 and your soil, you said, was 6?
I don't know
like
actually
that.
what my soil
Oh,
is. This is like,
well-
I actually haven't never tested my soil. So there you go.
Yeah, soil tests can be relatively inexpensive and fairly informative. But for example, if you wanted to lower the pH of your soil, a light application of sulfur, elemental sulfur, light application. And what happens is every time you water, you're making a little bit of sulfuric acid. And soil is really, really a stable thing in terms of pH. It's pretty hard to change this pH of soil, live soil especially, very dramatically. Water, on the other hand, you can change it pretty quickly. So yeah, I would always say work at amending the pH of your soil as versus amending the pH of your water.
Okay.
If you wanted to raise pH, oyster shell lime will do it over time. And I want to make sure I get this right, but if I remember correctly, and Dutch, you can probably correct me on this if I'm wrong, bacteria create an acidic environment and fungus create an alkaline environment. Is that correct? And so encouraging a lot of bacterial activity through ferments and the types of compost that you use in your garden is one way to lower the pH in your garden, whereas using more wood chips and whatnot will tend to increase the pH of your garden, or encouraging microbiology. I really love the mushroom thing. Steinmetz and all of his work is just amazing what's coming in that realm. And I don't feel very educated in it, but I'm trying to learn. But I always take it as a really good sign when I start seeing volunteer mushrooms in amongst the garden plants. That tells me that things are going well there.
Yes, I hear that. Josh, did you have another question? Nope. Okay. I saw a mushroom today. In fact, I went down and looked at my beds today because I was looking at the straw because I don't have I threw some just some clover around there. I just barely started a cover crop, so just starting.
I wanted to inject too. Like Terry, you said you hadn't had your soil ever tested. Here, you can do a soil test for $7, and the way you do it, you call up your county agent, the agricultural county agent, and they will tell you where to send it or what website to go to get the form, and then they just tell you how, like, they want 6 samples from 6 different parts or 9 samples or whatever they want, and it like Wade said, it's very inexpensive. It's
Roger, I am just lazy. I literally have a soil test box that I got from Canacon. But I went to this guy and I said, "Oh, are these free?" And he's like, "Yeah, you can have one." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Test my soil." I literally am lazy and not done it.
Well, we can't fix lazy, but we can.
I know
where to go get a soil test if they're scared to go get a soil test. It's real cheap, guys or girls, guys and gals, and friends. Fans.
But good. Thanks for the info. For those of you that are not lazy, go out and get one.
Well, and it's very informative. One of the things that's going to be really true in the cannabis space, especially if you're trying to do it on a commercial scale, is costs are going to be a real factor. And every time that you go and buy something that you need to make your garden work, you're adding to what you have to sell it for in order to keep doing that work. And we're all about sustainability, about trying to create a process that can be an ongoing thing. That's why I love the idea of creating your own nutrients. And I'll tell you this, Tara, I frequently call myself a lazy farmer. I am. I spend a lot of time walking around, looking at things and getting down on my hands and knees and looking even closer and thinking about what I'm seeing and trying to understand what I'm seeing and how it might benefit what I'm trying to do. And I really think that one of the healing potentials in cannabis has to do with that interaction with the plant and nature and how it works. And to visit back to soil tests real quick, soil test is a very inexpensive way to give you some information about what's going on in your soil, in your garden, that your plants would need in order to flourish. And that can give you guidance on the things you can do to make their environment more suitable for their needs. That's really what it boils down to.
And it can save you money if you're not, because you may not have to add something that you would pay for. So it decreases your bottom line, or it increases your bottom line. I don't know. Yeah, makes your bottom line healthier. Let's just put it
Very
out.
true. Okay, I do have a question, and I'm glad Justin just came in and he's talking about it too, because I was going to ask you this. You being from the California area and stuff, yeah. So mites, broad mites, and what have I been dealing with? What are they called?
Russet mites?
Russet mites. I hate those things. Oh my gosh. Any help?
Yes. They're vicious.
Yes.
And quite pervasive at this point in our area. Yeah. Go ahead. Somebody had something to say? Roger? No, okay, he's muted.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say Josh wants to answer to this too.
Yeah, Josh wants to answer too. Yes, we're dealing with them up in Washington. Yes, please.
A couple of things to say about it. One is different cultivars have different abilities to resist their onset or infestation. It's really, this is one of the reasons it's really important in, again, creating your own inputs. Don't take plants from other people's farms. If you don't have russet mites on your farm, you can avoid getting them by bringing plants from other people's farms. If you have to bring people's plants from other people's farms, put them in quarantine before you mix them into your plants and or put them in your garden, because frequently, especially nursery operations, will come with an extra little gift along with the plant. So that's one way to deal with russet mites and broad mites is
to realize that.
Go ahead.
I'm a slow learner, and this is the second time.
No. Again, this everything I've shared this evening, I learned from hard experience. There's no such things as mistakes. It's the price of tuition. Okay, and yeah, make your own inputs really means make your own inputs. Once broad mites are in a garden, or russet mites, they're fairly similar in their presentation. And I know that some cultivars are more sensitive to others than others, because for the most part, I've always had a research garden. This year we've got, I don't know, probably 20 different seed lines that we've sprouted, and we're just watching to see who's the star that might get a chance to be my personal use plants this year. But yeah, some cultivars are much more susceptible to these critters than others. So that's one way to look. If you have a plant,
is it terpene expressed?
Well,
related?
I assume that it's terpenes, because part of why the plant creates terpenes is not just to attract our attention, but to protect itself.
A defense mechanism.
Exactly. It's all of these are environmental. You know, the plant does all of these things for its benefit as well as ours. We have to remember that. So the terpenes, yes, are a defense mechanism.
So is there one you're noticing, or you haven't?
Guianol, I know, is gaining some recognition as something that pops up in plants that are stressed and under attack by bugs. But I'm not really informed on that part of it. Okay. I just know that comes into play, that some plants are more susceptible than others for an infestation of mites, those broad mites or russet mites. If you have a plant that has them and that's what you got and you want to save it, I have had some success with, you have to get down on the ground with the plant, and what I did was clear all of the layers of beautiful plant material and compost and whatnot that I built up in the soil around that plant. I cleared it all the way out to the drip line of the plant and a little bit past that, all the way down to the ground, and took that material and buried it deep in one of our compost piles. And then I went to the plant And every single branch where I saw that horrible sort of upward curling thing that the leaves are doing along the edges, every one of those branches, I took them off the plant. Every one. And then, and only then, did I do a foliar spray. First go round was I think I used water and soap. Again, Dr. Bronner's no scent. And a light foliar spray, focus on the underside of the leaves because that's where they're feeding for the most part. And you start at the base of the plant and you work up every branch that's left on the plant all the way to the tips. And you do this as soon as you find them. Then you're going to come back a couple days later and you're going to do a different preparation. You could do a ferment like lactobacillus. You could do a ferment of like the comfrey, nettle, horsetail. But again, what you want to do is different. You're attacking different points in their life cycle. You're trying to discourage the nymphs. You're trying to reduce the egg laying. If it's early in the plant's life cycle, I might go heavy and do something like neem oil or a horticultural oil. Again, I like to make them here on the farm. I can't grow neem, but I don't like using neem once I'm out of the nursery. Nursery is about the only place I'll use neem, and then only as a foliar treatment, as a dip, for example, in a quarantine. If I get plants that show up and they have bugs, I'll make a dip, and literally the entire plant gets dipped, and then I'll treat the soil, and then I'll go about rebuilding the soil's vitality. But any bug,
how much do you how do you dip that?
Let me finish that up.
Oh, sorry.
Any
go ahead.
bug you're not going to kill with one application of anything. That's the important point about integrated pest management. In order to tackle any pest, you have to take a systematic approach. You have to understand the life cycle of the pest, and you have to attack it at different cycles different points in its life cycle in a way that over time, you're not going to kill them all off, but you're going to control the infestation so you actually get something that's useful when you're done. So go ahead, Tara.
So the dip, you said, how you mix up the dip, the neem, you said a neem dip. How do you mix your neem dip?
I'd started off in warm water, depending again on how mature the plants are, what the planting medium is, because yeah, you want a deep enough bucket that you can immerse the entire plant into this dip. And again, Dr. Bronner's is a surfactant, the neem oil. It's been a number of years since I've done this one, but I think I still have a bottle of Einstein neem oil preparation because I thought that was a pretty good version of neem. And I don't remember the ratio. I think I typically use a quarter to a half of whatever the manufacturer recommends on such things if I'm buying a product like that. Because I figure they're always trying to sell their product. And again, any one treatment is not going to kill or control a pest. What it will do is it will kill off the pests, the portion of that population that is susceptible to that treatment. And then all the rest of them won't be dead, and they'll be resistant to that treatment.
I know a lot of them.
And that's why you have to vary your methods of control and your ways of attacking the plant's pests.
And isn't that part of the hatching of new pests, of the eggs and all? Isn't that part of the why you out too?
Yes.
I kept trying to get that in. That you're good.
Thank you for bringing that up, Roger. That's why I was talking about clearing all those beautiful layers of material that I built up on their soil underneath the plant, because russet mites and broad mites spend a portion of their life in that part of the soil, in the duff of your soil. They spend a portion of their life there, and they move back and forth between the plant and the soil. And so you want to attack them in the soil as well on the surfaces of the plant.
Okay, so
and that's what I did to control russet mites 3 years ago.
Russets and broad mites? or is there
For the
a
most part,
difference?
they're different critters, but for the most
Right?
part, their life cycle is pretty similar.
Okay.
And I found that I got good control with what I just described.
Okay, cool.
Steve had a question. I think Steve
Yeah,
had
I was just gonna ask. So,
about the dead.
so, so as far as like that, he said that the Dem Pure was using some heat for treatment in the grows for russets.
Josh can
Heat?
talk.
Josh, I guess Josh can talk about it.
Josh has had great luck with that.
Yeah, just can you hear Wade?
Wade can't hear you, but go ahead, Dutch.
Well, it's a heat treatment, so you can if you're in a greenhouse or in a indoor grow environment, you can raise the leaf surface temperature up to 140 degrees for an hour and a half, and that will kill all the bugs in the room on the surface of the leaf. You know, and it's actually pretty easy to do in a greenhouse. You know, if you have a heater or even some lights.
140 degrees.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's
And
okay.
the plants love it, you know, to be honest.
I thought it was 120.
Yeah, it might be 120.
120. 120 or 140. We're not sure. We'll check that data for you.
So it's 120. You can go up to
I didn't hear exactly what he said, of
Okay,
course.
so he said that they can actually, in a greenhouse, they've been getting it up to either 120 or 140, and they've been having really good luck with
it's 120.
120 controlling it in the greenhouses.
Yes, that's also true indoors. One of the things you can do to take care of a bug infestation indoors, you have to move the plants out. So when your harvest is done, before you put any new plants in, turn off all your ventilation and turn on all your lights and come back a day later. And the temperature will get up to 130, 140 degrees, most likely, especially if you're using high intensity discharge lamps. And that will kill the eggs and turn on your fans to circulate the hot air in the room. But that'll kill all the bugs and all the eggs and everything else. It's pretty effective at sterilizing an environment. Your plants, on the other hand, be it in a greenhouse or indoors, will not do well at all at those temperatures. But if Dutch is reporting that 120 degrees in a greenhouse with plants in it is controlling broad mites, that's a fascinating conversation that I'd love to hear more about at some point.
Well, with keep in mind plants in the ground. You know, let him know that. You know, the
okay, so it's plants in the ground. The roots are in the ground, but they're able to raise the temperature of the room, of the greenhouse, the ambient air, to 120.
120 for 1 hour.
That's far
120 out. For 1 hour.
And that's enough to kill off the mites. And to sterilize their eggs.
With repeated treatment over how much time, guys?
Yeah, and you have to consider all the factors, right? You know, the getting into the different layers of the plant, you know, and how big your
plants are, and how much aeration they're going to have. Yeah, there's probably a lot of considerations going into that. So I do have one more question on the bug thing, though. Have you ever heard about? I hate the name of this product. It's called Nukem, and it's supposed to be citric acid with a yeast.
Doesn't work.
Okay, it worked for me. I'm sorry, it worked.
Here's
it didn't work, and Tara said it works for her, so that's where.
So yeah, that's why I'm curious. I want to know more if anybody else knows it worked.
I've heard of it, and I've heard good things about it. I'm just really conservative. I have cut down plants that were infested with bugs that I had hoped would work out, rather than try and go to extremes. I mean, I know some preparations that are way more extreme than anything we've discussed that are extremely effective that you can make right at your own place. But I don't really talk about them because they're effective for all bugs. And one of the things you can do to help with bugs is to give the bugs something else to eat. They're called banker plants.
Yes.
For
Awesome.
mites,
Yes.
certain beans are more attractive for mites than cannabis. And so, bush beans are nitrogen fixers, which is nice, especially early in the season. And two-spotted mites tend to prefer beans, for example, or squashes, or, and it's not just mites, it's thrips and aphids. They all need to eat too, and they're in the garden. And if you give them something else to eat other than your cannabis plants, you might find them over there, and you can do whatever you want to treat them over there. But don't be putting funny business on your cannabis plants if you're offering it as medicine to people that might actually need large quantities of a high potency oil made from your plant material. That's really kind of the summary of my thing on it. And yeah, nuke them again. If it was just yeast and citric acid, I guess I'm okay with that. But I just saw that a lot of the citric acid that's being used in the food industry these days is made from a specific strain of Aspergillus, which is a toxin producing.
Oh, really? That's a good information for everybody to be able to look up tonight.
Yeah, take a look at citric acid production with Aspergillus. One of the specific versions of Aspergillus, which is one of the things your cannabis can fail for in cannabis testing in California.
Wow. Yeah.
One more reason to avoid citric.
It makes aflatoxins, I think they're called. Anyway, and yeah, it's all of the unknowns about anything you might put on your cannabis plant or on plants around your cannabis plants or in the soil of your garden that makes me so conservative and so cautious about what you're going to offer as medicine. Because again, when you know a 5-year-old that needs 1.5 or 2 grams a day of 80% cannabis oil, you want to know that that highly concentrated version of your plant is clean. It doesn't have any funny business in it. You just got to do that. So, and what I found, I have to say, really, as you go about building your soil, as you go about understanding more clearly the kind of cultivars that do well in your environment, because that's really an important part of this story, is cannabis is found all over the world. And if the genetics of your plant are from a place, a high desert like Afghanistan, and you live on the Washington coast and get 150 inches of rain a year, you're probably going to have trouble with mold. It's just the way it is. So you would look for maybe a South African variety where they get a lot more moisture, or maybe an Indian variety, Himalayan genetics, where they get quite a bit of moisture. You'll probably find that that would be better doing with mold. But yeah, just going about creating a soil that is live, full of diversity, fungus, bacteria, all kinds of micro and macro life going on in your soil. Most any plant you put in there, if the pH is right and your temperatures and your humidity and your, they flourish. It's a weed. Hello. It really is. It wants to grow. And here's the thing. I'll speak from my heart about how much I love this plant. One of the miracles of this plant is when you really look at what's going on, the plant uses soil, water, and sunlight. And it captures that sunlight and produces an oil. It literally is the sun's manifesting as love in the crystalline structures, the trichomes of that plant. And it's offering itself, that plant is offering itself, after capturing the love of the sun, as medicine. And you, again, however you want to define medicine, I think all cannabis is medicine. And it really has to do with the intention of how you work with it. But there's a real miracle there. This plant takes soil, water, and sunlight and creates this incredible oil that is full of all these compounds that have such amazing effects for the health and well-being of not just us, but all living creatures on this planet other than insects have an endocannabinoid system. Think about that. All animals on this planet other than insects have an endocannabinoid system, just like humans do. And this plant, in the mutual relationship we have with it, I think we've bred it for our benefit as well as its benefit. And I think on some level we have evolved to benefit from it. Certainly in the last 20,000 years or so, tribes of humans that were wandering around Central Asia that discovered this plant that made seeds that had protein in them and omega-3s, brain food, and meantime helped their immune system and their digestion, helped the old folks with their pain. I think those tribes experienced an evolutionary benefit or advantage, if you will. And meantime, I think this plant helped us learn how to do agriculture, because at some point, as people were carrying these seeds to new places and they fell on the ground and then they sprouted and they were there next year when those people came back to that place, they started realizing, hey, there's a connection here. And I really do think that this plant has been our ally for thousands and thousands of generations of humans. And it's only in the last 3 or 4 generations that we've made it the devil's lettuce. And we need to heal that. And I think that part of the inspiration to me around regenerative agriculture and the Dem family and the idea of working with this plant and working with nature is that we are, in fact, going to reveal that this plant is the healing of the peoples. It's not, as the Rastas used to say, and probably still do. It is the healing of the people, and it is the healing of the planet. We can change agriculture, we can change culture, we can change lives by working with this plant as our ally.
Absolutely. God, I just love how, wow, you speak of that so powerful. Just wait, that's awesome. So just to shift gears, just one more question we had over here was, Steve asked was, what type of cultivars are you going to be growing this season? You mentioned, you know, you have a special garden and you pop some beans, and what's popping up? Maybe you're going to share that?
Yeah, no, I don't have the list in front of me.
Okay, so we need to check your Instagram. Look for his Instagram,
well,
guys.
I did hit on you for that one now. Okay, you can remember all the shit that not the seeds you popped the other day. You know?
Yeah. Well, let's see. There's some things or
is there something special that sticks out?
I guess here is that I'm working with things that they're not really available to most folks. So it's kind of counterproductive for me to say that, well, for example, some of the cultivars that I've been working with in the past that are of high interest, we did some beautiful crosses out of Agent Orange for some of the citrus and pinene flavors that are available there. We call one of them Orange Rush. We found a phenotype that had 30 times the amount CBD to THC that finished in 7 weeks and had some beautiful terpenes. So I have some, with that phenotype, I crossed Valentine, which is a sister to AC/DC. I crossed a male of that with a female of that Orange Rush, as we called it. So I got I'm at F3 in that progression of trying to get back to that 30-to-1 that finishes in 7 weeks. So I have a couple of those. Let's see. Something I'm really excited about that actually is available if you ask for it out in the right spots. Abacus. My friend Chris Larson has created a stable seed line. He used to work with Lawrence Ringo, the fellow who found Sour Tsunami and the Harley Sue and Canasu, and did all of that work. Beautiful guy who's no longer with us, but Chris still is. And Chris just released last year a seed line called Abacus, and he sprouted, he had 48 female seedlings that he grew out in a garden in full sun in the soil. I haven't seen the test results on the oil. The plant material themselves, the flowers came back 17.5% CBD, 0.7% THC. And that was a mix of all 48 plants. So he's got a pretty stable phenotype expression going on there. And that's very exciting to me. I've got a couple of those that have popped, and I'm giving some to some of the folk here in the neighborhood to hopefully have access to that this coming year. We've got some Lebanese seeds that we got in that I'm looking forward to seeing. I ran into a cat at the Emerald Cup last year. I ran into Justin at the Emerald Cup last year. He gifted me some seeds that I've sprouted. I think he'd have to remind me, but I have notes about it.
And Harliquin?
And part of why I'm not very up on all of this is I have folks who help me with keeping track of all the seeds and the nursery thing that we are doing, because I can't do commercial cannabis activity here on my farm.
I gave him the Jamaican on
the
Harliquin.
real nut of it.
Just a minute. Okay, wait, Dutch, just try it. What did you say, Dutch? Just a sec.
It was the Jamaican on Harliquin, I think.
The Jamaican on Harliquin is
Yes.
what he thought he gave you.
Yeah.
He gave me 3 different things. That's
He
right.
said you gave you 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Harlequin was one of them. I think ACDC was another one. And the Jamaican was a CBD type as well, right? That's what I'm remembering. There were 3 things. I have notes on all of this. And like I said, I can't do commercial cannabis activity on my farm. So, and I'm trying to keep up with so many other things at the same time. I'm pretty active in the political scene right now. We're just about to enact a cannabis ordinance in our county, finally, after 3 years of fighting about it.
Wow, gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
I have a question about rosin and CBD.
Yeah.
So what about like reproducing? I like to do rosin. I'm a big rosin fan. That's because it's clean medicine, right? I can produce it myself as a medical patient. Do a lot of the CBD plants, do they produce a lot of the rosin? Is there any ones that are better than the other that we should try?
As a general thing, I'll say this. CBD oil, especially as there's more and more CBD and less THC, flows quite readily, more readily at room temperature, and can get insanely sticky.
I've noticed the higher CBD strains that I press are like really sappy and they just run all over the paper. Is that what you're, okay?
Yes, that's what I'm referring to.
Okay.
It's one of the field tests, if you will, when I'm working with an oil to see, before we've gotten analytical results from a lab, is I look at how readily does it flow in the jar that I have, or how sticky is it on the parchment paper that it's on.
Or the viscosity of it, kind of, right?
Exactly.
And whether the dogs want to eat it or not.
Yes, exactly. And I'm going to jump out of the question about rosin pressing for a second, and this is going to sound like a big detour, but one of the questions we talked about earlier was, what were some things you could do to change cannabinoid ratios and profiles in plants?
Yeah, that's okay. Go ahead.
Something that I wanted to say about that, in the biosynthetic process of making cannabinoids, the cannabis plant, the first cannabinoid that it makes is CBG, okay, cannabidiol. The next one of the next ones that it makes is CBD. And many of the cultivars that make high THC flowers make CBD for a minute, but then they quickly convert it into THC. One of the things that I've found with a lot of the CBD-rich cultivars that I've worked with over the years is that when you harvest the plant material, can change the ratio of cannabinoids in that plant material pretty significantly. And what happens is the production of CBD peaks in the flowering cycle before the production of THC peaks. And so to make it all simple for those of you that are cultivators and are wanting to increase the amount of CBD and decrease the THC that your genetics will allow, because that's the main factor. The genetics really determine your cannabinoid ratios and what cannabinoids are going to be there. But you can get quite a bit of variation in the actual ratio of your flower material by when you harvest it. And to make a long story short, if you want your CBD and THC to be close to the same ratio, given what genetics you're working with, you want to harvest like you would if it was a high THC cultivar. You would wait till most of your trichomes are milky, and some portion of them, up to a third, might be amber.
Right.
That's,
yeah.
That's only if you have a 50-50 strain
no,
cultivar.
that's for example, with Harliquin, if you harvest Harliquin, if you can find that original cultivar of Harliquin, if you harvest it at 7 to 8 weeks, okay, you are going to get a 3-to-1, maybe even a 4-to-1, 4 times the amount of CBD to THC. Whereas if you take it to 10 weeks, you're more likely to get a 2-to-1 or maybe even a 1.5-to-1. Okay. That Orange Rush cultivar, one of the reasons that it was so interesting to me, and I have test results that show this, that original plant that we found, part of why it caught my eye was it came on so quickly. It started flowering quickly. It had baseball-sized colas 6 weeks after starting flowering, like the first week in September. So one of the people that was working here back then was really into the Emerald Cup. And I know Tim back from when he was doing the Emerald Cup up at Area 101. And I'd kind of lost interest when it got bigger. But this guy really wanted us to submit something for the Emerald Cup. So I said, yeah, sure. Here's the $250. And why don't you do this one? Send off samples of this plant. It's finishing in time that it could actually properly cure, and we send it off. And it's a high CBD thing. And this is the first year that we got CBD in. And anyway, yeah, we harvested about 5 pounds off of a plant that was not much taller than I am on September 25th. And those flowers tested 31 times the amount CBD to THC, 17 and change CBD, not quite 0.5% THC. We harvested another 5 pounds on October 15th, about 20 days later. It came back 13% CBD, almost 3% THC. So it was a 4-to-1 now. Went from a 30-to-1 to a 4-to-1 in 20 days. Now, not all of the cultivars that I've worked with do it that dramatically, but you can change quite a bit what that actual ratio is. And usually what happens is the CBD, the cannabinoid content by weight of CBD goes down the later you harvest, and the amount of THC comes up. And so you don't have to increase the THC very much at all to get a 30-to-1 into a 10-to-1.
Can I ask? Oh, go ahead, Jess. I wanted to ask a question on that.
I was going to ask about Cannatonic.
Go ahead.
In relevance to that. How much does Cannatonic, is it Cannatonic affected by the harvest period?
How much is Cannatonic affected by the harvest period?
How much of what is affected by the
Cannatonic?
Oh, Cannatonic. You know, I have only grown Cannatonic once. Cannasu, which is a cross of Cannatonic and Sour Tsunami. There's a narrow leaf phenotype of it that's pretty stable. I found that it stayed pretty reliable between 20 and 25 to 1. A broader leaf version of it was more like a 2 to 1, and it was really stable. It didn't seem to care when it was harvested. Whereas Harliquin, I have seen quite a variation in its cannabinoid ratios based on harvest date. Not
so
so much.
to say that when you were talking about, because you never really you kind of went around it and then you examined it in a different way. But it's safe to say if your trichomes are present but they're clear, there's no THC in them, so that would be your highest point of CBD.
No, not that there's no THC, Roger. It's just that the plant's ability to store THC in the trichomes is not fully realized at that point.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but what I was saying was when you were talking about if you're basically what I got out of it, you said if you take it to full growth potential where you got dark amber trichomes, you're going to way much higher THC to CBD ratio and you're going to take it away. If you were to harvest it when you see trichomes develop, but they're not clear, not cloudy yet, not even cloudy, they're just all clear and pretty, then that would be your highest CBD possibly. No?
No, yes, you're quite right. And I did leave that out. I'm sorry. I tend to, I'm an old man and I ramble in circles. But no, you're quite right. What I usually tell people is, in my experience, the peak of difference between CBD and THC and the best yield, because that's a factor as well. You want those trichomes to fill in. Is when you still have clear trichomes, but most of them are milky. Most of them have gone cloudy. None of them are amber yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Got clear trichomes. Most of them are milky. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And that's where I find the highest yield in terms of weight of flowers that you actually get, as well as trichome development and filling in the trichomes, and the biggest difference in, that's your peak of CBD production right there, and your THC production has not peaked yet.
Right. So would you harvest right as soon as?
And thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, so Potent's got a question. What?
Would you then harvest as soon as you see the first trichome start changing? Is that kind of the cue?
So then if you were going to harvest, as your cue for the highest CBD content would be start harvesting as soon as the trichomes start to change?
The very first ones.
The very first. Or a guesstimate, right? I mean, we're just kind of all like speculating. I mean,
you wanted to see mostly milky trichomes before you'd have that.
The very first. Like as soon as you see
and here's part of what's in that equation about that is some of it's based on test results. I have seen test results for every week of flowering for some of these cultivars, and the biggest ratio difference, that's the key point there. The biggest ratio difference happens when there's still clear trichomes, but most of the trichomes are milky. And part of the equation is that point, you're still adding weight to your flowers. Your trichomes are still adding oil to them. So it is a little bit of a premature harvest. So you're losing something in your yield. But if the difference, that ratio, if you really want that 25 or 30 to 1, harvest a little earlier. You won't get as much yield, but you'll get those big numbers, which can look attractive to some folks. In my experience, the only difference between a 30 to 1 and a 20 to 1 is, folks, there are some people whose central nervous system is abundantly rich in CB1 receptors. And those folks they get really stoned on one toke. So a formulation, a sublingual preparation that most people would feel like, oh, well, I took a quarter dropper and nothing happened, so I took a whole dropper full, and now I feel a little something, but, I'm not really stoned. Some of these people would be out of their mind stoned, like they'd eaten 5 brownies kind of stoned. There are such people that are that sensitive.
And there are those people that are allergic to it. Let's not forget that. There are
Yes.
those.
Yes.
No. Yeah.
No.
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
not allergic to
Yes.
the
Yes. No, I know a fellow who's allergic.
Okay,
to it.
wait. So Steve's saying no, and you're saying
terpenes. They're
yes.
allergic to the terpenes. I know
Well,
some,
the fellow I'm thinking of believes he's allergic to it. I don't know. You know, I can't believe that that's possible myself.
they're
but
allergic
whatever.
to the terpenes,
Yeah.
not.
But Wade, Steve was saying they were allergic to the terpenes, is what he.
I know someone is allergic to limonene,
Mm.
for example.
That right, Steve?
Well, yeah, that would date definitely. Yeah.
Yes. And I will say that we have, again, back to epileptic kids for a second. One of the things we found is we had a cultivar called Electra, cross of anyway, Electra. And it's a really reliable producer of CBD for us, but it produces abundant terpenoline, which some folks like because it's stimulative, but it turns out to be not good at all for kids with epilepsy. So, you know, we use that for other formulations and whatnot.
Well, that's another awesome thing, a piece of information people need to know. My goodness. Terpenoline, is that what you said?
Terpenoline.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
Not-
think that's the problem because, one of the kids that we were having really good success with high CBD, low THC plant material made into oil. For the kids that are in an ongoing program with us, we like to change the cultivar that they get periodically so they don't build a tolerance to the cannabinoid and terpene profile that's in the medicine we're giving them. Just like if you're smoking the same pot all the time, after a while it doesn't work in it well anymore. Same is true for kids with epilepsy. That's what we found. So yeah, we change up we offer them different things over the course of a year. We like to change it up every 3 weeks when we have that much available things to pick from. But that was the good old days, and this is now. But what we did find was, one of our kids specifically went from having really good seizure control to outrageous seizures, like a lot, when we started on this new preparation. And we went back and looked at, where did we mess up here? And the only big difference in that one cultivar was terpenoline. There was I think it was 4 milligrams per milliliter or per liter or something. Yeah, anyway, it was 4 point something milligrams of terpenoline. And in the ones that were where we were seeing good benefit from it, they were all less than 1 for terpenoline. That particular child was seeing really good results with beta-carotene, limonene, and humulene in his preparations. I know we got sidetracked there. Sorry about
Very
that.
cool. If there was going to be another cannabinoid that you were going to want to go after better than a CBD, which would be the next one that you maybe think you might go after?
Well, I have some seeds sprouted that are supposed to be fairly abundant in THCV. The Varian family of cannabinoid compounds sound pretty interesting. 2 years ago, out of a batch of seeds popped up a thing that was really abundant in CBG at finish, which is pretty unusual. We have some of those seeds sprouted this year, hoping we find that one again, because what we typically do in the research garden is when we harvest the plant, we send it all off. We keep a small sample that we trim for people to look at how they come out and what it is and what it smells like and whatnot. But all of the rest of the plant goes to manufacturers to make oil, and they keep it separate by the plant each, because they're all research plants. And this one came back. The oil came back. It was 47% CBG and 27% THC by weight. And that was very exciting because CBG has some of the doctors that are working with epilepsy have shown interest in that. At this point, we have not offered that to any of the families, because we don't have a cutting of that plant. And so the worst thing that can happen in this work is you find something that works for a kid and then you run out. Yeah. So CBD is one that we're interested in.
Poor parents. I can't imagine the parents of these kids. Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I know what it was like for me when I wasn't growing and happened to just go down and buy my own rosin. So I can't imagine kids. And oh my gosh, I honestly, you keep up the good work, man. I just have to say that. It's wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not just me. I'm a small part of a whole bunch of people who are trying to keep this alive.
Yeah, but you're the one person in front of me that I can say it to, right? So
I'm willing to
there
be
you
the
go.
public face for a whole bunch of people who are trying to make this happen.
Pass the word on.
I like the fact that you're involved in the children's already too. I mean, that's where my passion is. When I give to charity, it's like the St. Jude's or something like that does things for children and stuff like that. So that's a big thing for me and I didn't know, because I don't really know who you were until tonight, really, So to hear that you're involved and been involved and you were doing all these tests with the children and helping them out like that blows me away too. And I'm sure it blows everybody away. I'm awesome that you took that direction for sure. And Steve, we all agree. Yeah.
Well, I'll say this: if these things that I've been talking about sound interesting to you, there's two different websites that I'd steer you towards. We've got to do the social media thing, right?
No, this is here. Plug away. This is what we're here for, to get your word out. Please
check out House of Harliquin, and that's HOUSE of Harliquin.org. That's my website. That's we just turned it from a not-for-profit into an actual company now. Now we're trying to figure out what to do with it. But that's our website. I haven't really updated it recently, but there's a lot of good information there on cultivation practices and ferments and various cultivars I've worked with over the years. And then if you're interested in the aspect of some of the families that I'm talking about, Caladrius is spelled CALADRIUS, and then it's network. CaladriusNetwork.org is a website that has some of the information and some of the work that we've been doing. And I believe that website is still up, although the entity has officially disbanded because state law doesn't allow it anymore. But yeah, like I said, I'm willing to be the public face of a more or less ongoing effort because, like I said, the need has not gone away, and it's just gotten a lot trickier helping to fulfill that need.
It's really sad that the states will screw up a program like that. That just pisses me off. And I don't want to. I could actually say fuck them right now, and I apologize for being rude.
Well, it's really hard, Roger. Like I said, there's a few things that are really good about the legalization thing that has happened here in California. You can go into a dispensary, and what you buy is what it says it is, and it will be clean and pure. And if you took the testing requirements for cannabis into a grocery store, there wouldn't be a single legal thing in that grocery store. Every single thing would fail, the things that cannabis has to pass. So in a California dispensary, yes, you are getting one of the purest consumer products available on the planet. That's a good thing, really.
It is. That is a good thing.
That way, that doesn't kids as much. So that's what I was getting at.
Yeah, but like one of the ways Caladrius is still trying to deal with the need of the families is one of the families that's right here in our county. We made an arrangement with the dispensary that just opened in our county that this family could come in and get a supply of the medications that were needed for their child at the cost that the dispensary had to pay in order to get those medicines. With the limitations on dosage that are allowed by state law, even under medical use. The pile of packaging was it wouldn't fit in a messenger bag. It was crazy, all the packaging and whatnot. And meantime, even with the 50% discount and everything that they could do, like the dispensary paid the sales tax, the dispensary covered everything they could. The family still had to pay $860 some for 20 days supply of something they used to get for free from the Cannabis network.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, the Cannabis network, we did the math recently, and over the 3 years that we've been in existence, at retail price, we've given away $1.2 million worth of product to families at no cost.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You guys, cheers to that. I mean,
Yeah.
let's just take a moment and like seriously recognize the work and the more work that needs to be done for these families and these people out here. That's powerful.
Another thing to say is right there in Washington or right there in South Carolina or wherever you are, who you are listening to this, there are families that have this need. And most of them are in the shadows. They're hiding. They're ashamed. They're afraid. They're broke because the medical system takes your money, man, fast and furious.
Yes, it does.
And it's in any person's nature to try and save the life of their child. So you do whatever you can. But yeah, that need is out there. It's worldwide. All persons are subject to these diseases and issues that cannabis can help, not just children and not just seniors. All of us. There's an incredible range of conditions that cannabis seems to benefit when the preparation is correct, the dosage is correct, and the chemistry is correct. And it's pretty dramatic how well it works with so few side effects. It's just insane that prohibition is still going on.
And that brings me to the next question. Exactly. The next question. In chat, perfect timing. Exactly. So we have a question. Any studies on blood sugar or joint health or cancer cell inhibitors using any types of other CBD type of like THCA or CBG or any other type of things? Also, I would like to know if there's any particular thing with any cancer or breast cancer. This is coming from personal question also as well. So go ahead.
Yeah. As a general statement, I want to start by saying in terms of health, any person that I'm working with, I always try and talk to them about what do you eat? What do you drink? What's your stress situation in your life? You know, because all of those are factors in wellness. But when you get into some of the conditions that people are seeking help for, one of the important ones before you start mixing cannabis or especially CBD into the conversation is what are the pharmaceutical drugs that you're using? Because it turns out that one of the side effects, if you will, of CBD is it slows down the liver's ability to metabolize certain pharmaceutical drugs. And so dosage instructions and dosage regimens for pharmaceutical drugs are built around the idea that your body is you'll take this pill and it'll get into your bloodstream, and then your liver is going to break it down and pull it out of your bloodstream and eliminate it in your urine or your sweat or your breath. CBD slows down at least two of those metabolic pathways that we're aware of. And a good shade tree mechanic way of figuring out if your pharmaceuticals are going to be a problem if you're using CBD is look at your pharmaceuticals flyer information about how to take that drug. And if it says anything about do not take this drug with grapefruit juice, then you should talk to your doctor before you start using CBD, because grapefruit juice is another thing that inhibits one of these metabolic pathways. I think it's the CTY450 metabolic pathway and the FAAH metabolic pathways that are affected by CBD. And so if you start taking CBD with these drugs, these pharmaceutical drugs, what happens is the pharmaceutical drugs end up increasing in your bloodstream. And we've seen real problems with epilepsy and with some cancer medications, especially like antidepressants and sleep aids and some of those. CBD interacts with those. So if you're on pharmaceutical drugs and you want to use CBD, talk to the doctor who prescribed them. And if they don't know what you're talking about, again, look at the CTY450 and the FAAH metabolic pathways in the liver that break down those drugs. And then in terms of cancer, and specifically breast cancer, for the most part, I really push people to get equal amounts of CBD and THC and other cannabinoids and terpenes. And the only reason to limit THC is if they become uncomfortable with the psychoactivity. And that's where rosin pressing can come into play, because by rosin pressing, you can preserve THC still in the acid form. And if they don't heat it before they consume it, then it won't be as psychoactive and you can get a larger dose. And it's become really clear to me that CBD and THC for most of these conditions, it's important. That's why I want the full extract cannabis oil, the full chemistry of the plant. It's not just about CBD any more than it was just about THC. In this conversation about cannabis as medicine, it's the whole plant, all the chemistry. And so for cancer, really the issue is to get cannabinoids into the body, CBD and THC, and to increase those cannabinoids over a period of time so that the patient, the end user, can go about their life, can do the things that they need to do to feed themselves, to take care of their family, to take care of themselves, while increasing their dosage. And for many cancers, we see pretty dramatic results with that. It sometimes takes weeks and months, but we've seen tumors shrink and disappear. We've seen glioblastoma diagnosis sent home to hospice, told somewhere between weeks and maybe a couple of months, end up living for 4 years. And he has since passed, and I cared very much about him. But he got 4 years with his family.
Take a moment.
Yeah, no. The thing is, there's so many of these stories, and they're real to me.
Thank you for sharing this with us, Wade. Like, we really, like, I've never heard all these stories. Thank you. I appreciate this.
Well, this is what cannabis as medicine really means. And if you're working with cannabis and you know people in your community who are in need, reach out to them and start exploring what some of the cannabinoids can do. I mean, THC is wonderful. I myself personally am a huge fan of THC. I just have to say. I enjoy CBD as well.
Me too.
And I'm thrilled about what's happened in the world around CBD. But I think THC is a really important cannabinoid. Dr. Raphael Mechoulam insists to this day, I believe, I haven't heard it from him recently, but I've heard it from him in the past, that THC is the only real medicinal cannabinoid in cannabis. That's what Dr. Mechoulam says. So who are we to say that CBD is a medicinal product? But we see some benefit with CBD and THC together. And so I do have to say, though, with breast cancer, my memory, again, there's so many different things I'm trying to keep track of, but memory says there are 4 different identified types of human breast cell cancer lines.
Yes.
And if memory serves
Estrogen
correctly,
positive and negative. Is that the one you're talking
yeah,
about?
I'm not informed on the specifics of it, but I will say this: it is my understanding. And again, if breast cancer is an issue for you, talk to an oncologist who is informed about cannabis, and I can recommend several. I know several. I believe that 2 or 3 of those breast cancer cell lines are very susceptible to CBD and THC together. One of them is not only resistant, but actually becomes more aggressive with it. So, and I wish I could, I'm not well informed about that. But the Google foo it.
Well, that's okay. I'll give you an email, and then you could reach out to me. And then if someone else has more questions after the show, they know how to get in contact with you. But thanks for this information. I appreciate it. Is there any more questions, you guys? I feel like are we keeping you up too long, or we want to try and?
No, I really care about sharing the information that I've learned. By a lot of what I've learned from talking to people who are dealing with these issues. So yeah, I'm totally open to talking to folks about these kind of things. I really am deeply rooted, if you will, in my experience that the cannabis plant itself can do no harm. And if you're a healer, that's one of the first rules: do no harm. So, yeah.
You were excellent. You're very excellent tonight.
Yeah, I mean, the chat is all going off. Everybody's commenting. You've been so informative tonight, Roger. Or not Roger. I'm talking to Roger because I saw Roger's face pop up.
Well, I can hear Roger and I can hear Tara, but I can't hear Jason and I can't hear Steve, so that's a drag.
Yeah, so Dutch and Steve and Dutch. Go ahead, Steve. Did you want to say anything else?
I'll just thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge and your stories. This is a great episode I can recommend to people that are having issues with seizures or have sick children and stuff. And just listening to you is really going to make a huge difference for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, so Steve's like saying he's going to love this episode and passing it on and information. We're going to recommend this for a while and just really, really, really appreciate the knowledge. I mean, everybody's thanking everyone in the chat. And yeah, thanks everybody for being here in the chat and supporting us. Please share, support, and let us know if you want more people on here, who you like, if you want more ideas. Leave comments. Steve needs to know.
I know you can't hear me. Wade.
And Dutch is saying something now, so just a minute.
You can't hear me.
Go ahead.
But I just want to echo,
or someone else.
I want to echo that that we need to connect with folks in our local spaces. Like I grow a lot of cannabis, and that really spoke to me. Like how I can just reach out with my excess, because I have a lot of excess.
You're right, Dutch. Yeah. So Dutch is just reiterating about how you're saying just here in our local area, how we can reach out to people that needy families that need stuff, because we have material. I have trim. I mean, I have stuff. I mean, really, I guess, how do we do that? Like, they're afraid to reach out. I don't know how to find them. How do we start making these connections, right? Because they're afraid to be illegal. I'm afraid how do I contact somebody? Everybody's so afraid of all the laws.
Usually there are organizations where families will come together because they're sharing a common problem in trying to solve these things. And if you have a good relation with medical practitioners in your area, or nurses, or individuals in the healing arts, if you ask about people who might benefit from cannabis, you'd be surprised at the number of healing professionals who are coming to understand about cannabis that might be open to a conversation that could steer you to a group of patients that might be interested in working with you. I first met Forrest, the young man who started the Cladrus Network, at a Board of Supervisors meeting. He came and basically did a plea
to the supervisors to allow him to, he had found a couple of cannabis farmers in the area. He got a job as a trimmer on a farm, and yeah, they were scared to work with him, and he was asking them to create a reasonable ordinance, and that's when I introduced myself to him and told him I wanted to help him, and yeah, the Caladrius Network grew out of that moment, and any one of you can do that. Part of the vision of the Caladrius Network is to create a model. We're still working on that part. To create a model that could be exported to any other community where there are like-minded folk, and there are folk who have that need. And I suggest that the cannabis plant tends to identify the people who have that like mind that I have tried to describe this evening, and I see much agreement in the panel that's here this evening. Yeah, we can change the world one person at a time. Just reach out and try to help. Offer the love the plant offers to you, offer it to others. And yeah, that's kind of all I got. And I really appreciate the invite, Steve, and the group of folk. And it was really lovely seeing Dutch show up. And I'll look forward to doing it again sometime, maybe when we can hear each other.
I was going to say that, yeah, you could, yeah, we definitely love to have you back for sure. I think I can speak for Steve, and I know they're bummed out because this show was so awesome, and they weren't able to really, but they got a lot of questions. We got a lot of questions from Steve. It just wasn't, and Josh too, but it was great. And we often have people back, and I'm sure you can fill another 3 hours whenever you want to come back. I'm pretty sure Steve will give you, if you want to book it, Steve will probably.
Yeah, in fact, bring Forrest on. Like, I would love Forrest and you guys to both come on. Like, yeah, that would be, whew, yes.
Well, one of the reasons that I'd be delighted to come back and chat again. I've had fun, and I feel like this has been a great conversation. I've learned some things here this evening, and I'm looking forward to exploring some more about some of the things we've talked about myself. Forrest is a frequent invitee to Hash Church, but doesn't make it very often because
he's like so busy and he's got all his stuff with his kids, so that's totally understandable. No, yeah,
like it's really challenging for Forrest.
I totally get it.
To do something, but yeah, I'll do what I can to fill in for him.
But he is invited anytime. That's all I'm saying. Like,
yeah,
definitely. Did Steve? Did you have any?
No, just thanks, and we'll happy to have him at a time, and thanks a lot.
Okay. Well, awesome, Wade. Thank you so much. Is there any last things you want to throw out, or a few more blurbs, or anything else you want to? How do people find you? Go ahead and throw all that out. One more time. Go for it.
Well, again, I'm on Instagram as HAUS of Harliquin because somebody else already had. Well, it's a long story. Anyway, yeah, on Instagram, I'm House of Harliquin, and Facebook, I'm on Facebook, although I've never done it. My Monica, my wife, who you saw go by earlier, she does my Facebook posts for me.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, and then our website, House of Harliquin, HOUSE, houseofharliquin.org, and the Caladrius Network, that's spelled CALADRIUS Network. And I know Forrest has a Facebook thing, and I don't think he does Instagram or Twitter or any of those other things. And yeah, on the website at House of Harliquin, there's a contact tab, and if you go there, I'm the one who ends up looking at those emails. And I get lots and lots of junk emails from Cialis sellers and Bitcoin miners, and
so it'd be nice to actually have a cannabis one.
Yeah, I love it. And I do get cannabis emails, but not very often.
Yeah, I understand. I got websites too, and I had to shut down some emails for that same reason. they get it, some software they get in and hack the crap out of it.
Yeah, what are you going to do? I mean,
I
it's the
think
nature of the
you
thing.
could mod up Sid. He's been moderating for us tonight there, Steve, putting all the links in for us in chat there. Thanks, Sid, again. He's putting all the Claudius network and
cool.
everything in.
Hello,
Thank
Sid.
you.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah,
Bless
thanks,
you.
guys, everybody tonight.
Good night.
Take care, Wade.
And yeah,
Bye,
puff
Wade.
up.
I think Poten's going to stay on here and talk a little bit more about what the show's going on, so you're probably not going to hear the rest of the conversation.
Well, I'm going to turn my camera
And if you
off.
want to just jump off here and go away, we can contact you later and meet up later. Whatever you got going on, feel free to sit and hang out.
All right. Well, I'm going to turn my camera off, but I'll unplug my
Hang out?
headphones and listen to the conversation.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Cheers.
it.
Ciao for now.
Awesome.
Later, Wade. Great meeting you.
Right back at you. I look forward to meeting you all in person. Cheers.
Hey, for
Cheers.
sure.
Yeah.
See you down the road, possibly sooner.
Okay, so chat can all hear Steve, right? Let's just make sure. I'm guessing chat can hear you. Yeah, they've been hearing you all along, but go ahead.
Yeah. So how's it going, Josh? What's new with you and your grow?
What's new with me? I don't know. I got my sprayer I was talking about, so I've been spraying some shit around my property, spraying some cannabis maintenance spray. That's kind of what's new with me. I've got seeds are popping off like crazy. Yeah, real stoked on so many seeds. But was just talking with Mr. Bob Hemphill about these Northern Lights, and trying to figure out what was going on with those. And so,
Oh, you did? You talked to him?
yeah, we were just sending some messages back and forth.
Oh, awesome. Okay, cool.
Yeah, he's got the whole slew of Northern Lights, you know.
Yes, he does, and I was too chicken to contact him yet.
No, I just messaged him, and he was really cool about it, and he explained it, and he's going to, you know, even send some more, so different ones. So look at him side and, like,
yes.
Honestly, like, I'm just really just wishing it was like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not wishing shit. I'm just excited for the season and loving what's going on.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Wow. Your plants look amazing and your greenhouse look amazing. It was so awesome meeting up with you guys and seeing that. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm just excited to get the plants in the ground. I'm going to do some tilling and do some direct seeding, which I haven't done with cannabis. I've done it with tomatoes and other plants, but this property was pretty destroyed, like I've kind of explained before. And having these tools of the compost tea brewers and the proper applicators, like I'm really confident I can dominate this shit.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'll let you know one way or the other what goes on, but I'm going to do some direct seeding, and I have my hugel beds and my greenhouse and my hoop house, and like I kind of will have the whole gamut. And then we're doing the aquaponics, obviously, with Steve. He's coming out in first week of June, and we're doing a commercial aquaponics course. So shout out, plug for that. And it's you know, beyond the fact that it's a commercial aquaponics course, this is kind of what I've been thinking about is like, I'm doing all that, and it's kind of cool to see. And there's a ton to learn. You know, there's hugelculture. I will have the plants direct in ground. I'll have the greenhouse. That is, you know, in my opinion, a fairly high tech greenhouse. It's not the most high tech, but it's, you know, I got lights and computers and radiant floor and heat and I got a good clone up, and you'll see a lot of genetic diversity, excuse me, probably more than you'll see in any other acre in cannabis going on right now. Well, I don't know. There's a lot of genetic diversity. That's all I'll say.
Didn't you say? Oh, go ahead.
And then but the real focus is going to be on aquaponics, and you know, both Steve and I have been doing aquaponics forever, and and Steve is like the guru because he's been straight up focusing. Obviously, we all know that on aquaponics and commercial aquaponics, nonetheless. And so we'll be just doing all the hands-on on all this stuff. We're gonna build a bed. it's an 8 by 100-foot bed. There will be an aquaponic bed with a big reservoir, and we'll kind of piece it together. It's not like we're not like trying to get some slave labor out of it. It's just more so folks can like see, Steve and I will prep the whole thing, but it's like so folks can see how it just pieces together and walk away. The goal is that folks can walk away with a full understanding on how to run an commercial aquaponic cannabis farm.
Well, even more important,
from
that's
seed
what I was
to
gonna say.
harvest, or clone
You're
to
building.
harvest.
Okay.
Like all the way through how to design the system, how to build the system, what nutrients are going to need to be added to the system, what you're going to need to feed your fish to create the amount of nutrients for the plants that you are growing, the beneficial insects that you need for IPM, insect pest management, how to clone, how to mother, like we on and on. Like there's a lot that we'll be teaching, and so Steve's probably got some to add to that.
Yeah, we'll be kind of going everything tailored specifically around aquaponics, and then, like you said, you're going to get a chance to see a whole bunch of different types of cultivars, look at different growth, see full start to finish setup. We'll do a little hash making as well, and all different types of things that kind of the full process. Holding your hand live at his farm. It's going to really be kind of a cool experience because you kind of get to see. There aren't too many other classes that are held on a Den Pure farm, that's doing all these different types of things all on one property. So even if you're just trying to learn more about that, it's definitely a great experience to come see, how a commercial, small scale farm runs, from start to finish. And he'll have hundreds and hundreds of different plants to look at. So if you really want to, you haven't been exposed to it, it's a great opportunity. That's on June 6th through 9th.
The point I was trying to
We
make
could say
is
thousands,
to
but
teach
that
people how to build it. That's what I think they're going to leave with something just as important as. I mean, that's an awesome experience going to be. But the reason I was trying to say something was because I thought you had said you were going to basically let them help build it a thing, so they would actually walk away knowing how to build a system, not just how to use it or grow in it, but how to build one. And that's just the most important part of it, I think. Josh.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and that I was trying to say that, but I was, it's not like sometimes you go to courses and permaculture courses or whatnot, and you end up feeling like you're just like slave labor, and that's not the intent here. Steve and I are going to do all the prep work. That's what I was trying to say. We'll make it so it's just a quick, like you can see how it all goes together, and the concept is that you can walk away, and you're not going to obviously like go from total beginner to advanced grower in 4 days. That's not what we're going to be able to do for you. But
what? I'm going to be disappointed then.
if you are have been growing for a while, like I think that you'll be able to walk away with a good harness on what you need to go into next, and all the little key areas and yeah.
And then after hours at the Home Depot, you'll be able to take your stuff home and build on your own system.
I don't know about that, but you definitely have an idea of what you need to do and what not to do for sure. And you'll also be able to, I know Josh has a bunch of really amazing herb there. We'll be able to, after class and the end of the day, we'll be able to try out some stuff and be a really good time.
I'll bring some rosin.
I think some of the other students are bringing lots of weed. So.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, we got the beach real close, 5-minute drive to the beach. And it's good. We go there and barbecue once or twice a week, honestly.
Clams? Can we go clam it?
Yeah, we have clams and crabs and oysters. You can go out and just pick them up, and mussels and shit. So
that'd be fun.
Yeah, and June's a good time for it. Yeah, if I remember before the red tide comes in.
Yeah, because that's more like in August, right? Later in the year.
Yeah, when it warms up. Yeah, so.
Yeah.
And we got a public state park here, Birch Bay State Park, for people that can camp at. And good time.
Yep. Good times.
Awesome. Anything else?
I mean, that's pretty much it, you know, for me.
He's working his butt off, man. What do you mean anything else?
That's what I've been doing. I've been working getting that new grow up and running. So
Both of you been so busy. My gosh.
I saw you standing in a big giant reservoir today. I believe it was. I'm not sure. What are you using that big giant blue container for?
yep. Yeah, working on getting this new company I'm working with out in Oklahoma, getting them all up and running. They got the dispensary open up on what was it, the 20th, and just getting the cultivation and extraction stuff online. Everything's going really well. So I'll have lots of cool pics from there from now on. Well, yeah, pretty much from now on.
Nice.
All kinds of cool stuff going on. You know, I'm all over the place. You guys know that, but I'll be there a lot more often.
Now, isn't that those fellas you had on the show a month or so ago?
Yep.
Yeah, that's that. I noticed they're
Update on the flood. How are we? Look, what happened?
Oh, yeah.
No, it just happened. We had 6 inches of rain in like 3 hours or something crazy. So we had to for me to get back to my hotel, it was just, I needed to get the hell out of there. So
everything was okay.
The buildings weren't threatened at all. It was just a matter of there was a couple of low spots in the road, and where it gets cut off, you know, and like this, I could have stayed there if I had to. Just would have been really annoying. So
water coming in the building. So we're putting water.
We had to dredge through the water. Luckily, we were in a high pickup truck, but we had, the water was rising when we left, so it's a good thing we left when we did.
Got it.
But yeah, so what about you? Anything new with you?
I just still I got my brown sugar, and I got my jars. Here they are. I got 2 jars. And I was paying attention tonight. And so, yes, I have stinging nettle I'm going out tomorrow to get. And I was going to get dandelions today, but the lawnmower guys came and they whacked them all. Oh. So I will probably go way out back where we have like natural growing stuff, which would probably be better anyways. And I'm going to go get those. So tomorrow morning, that's my plan. And I have my brown sugar in jars. There you go.
What about you, Roger?
Yeah, just not a lot. I've been working on I'm in the middle of doing my labs. I think my rice wash is going to be ready tomorrow, maybe the next day. It started to change where I can actually have a scent to it, but I haven't smelled any sweetness yet. But I did notice a change. So I don't know if it's supposed to. You can notice a change, then when it gets sweet, it's ready. Or if it's supposed to smell sweet when it first changes. So it'll be an experiment to figure it out. And my labs or my FPJ, I'm pissed off of my dandelions. Fortunately, I still have a shitload. But I'm usually spot on 100% when it comes to numbers and all that. But they fucked up on I don't know how much of a fuck up it is, except that I've come out with a really thick liquid because I added too much sugar. There's so many things in K&F where you do 1-to-1, the weight times the weight, 1-to-1, but in FPJ you do half as much sugar as the weight of the plant material. So I overdid it with the sugar, and I don't think that necessarily hurt anything. I'm going to come out, I think, with something probably pretty strong, but it's just not liquid. It's not liquidy at all. And I'm not sure I'm just probably gonna have to start over and then experiment with what I got and see what happens. I
couldn't help because I haven't done that yet. But Jesse was asking in chat. Yeah, so the jars I bought are canister ones because I noticed when Chris Trump was doing his stirring, like it was gonna be nice to have a wide mouth, right? Like that's what I noticed. So she was asking in chat what I bought, so that's what I got. So there you go. Do you do that too, Roger? The wider mouths?
Well, I use basic. Well, I got all kinds of stuff, but I've got a lot of mason jars, all kinds of big size, different mason jars. So you can get wide mouth mason jars too. Now,
I do have wide mouth mason jars, but those are even
yeah,
extra
no,
wider.
that's nice. I think it's a matter of money with me. It was a lot cheaper to buy the mason jars, and I looked at those, and they were just kind of up there.
I give all my darn jars away, so I had to go buy jars anyway. So there you go.
Yeah. Now, the one thing Josh, made me realize the other day was that I didn't need to do like a 5-gallon bucket of stuff, because when you get it ready, it's 1 to 1,000. And on Josh's entire acre of his farm, he told me he sprays 1 gallon to 1.5 gallons per week, and that's at 1 per 1,000. So he takes one part of his FPJ, so that means 1 to 1,000, and he's only using a gallon per week. There's only so many weeks in the year, so that means you only need so
yeah,
much.
that was just I'm just spraying 1.5 gallons or 1.75 gallons in the greenhouse of foliar.
Oh, I thought you said the whole
Yeah.
thing. But,
No,
well, you said your greenhouse, which is bigger than most people's gardens. So the point you were making was, so he's only going to use 52 to 75 or 80 gallons in an entire year, and that doesn't take I'm just telling you, Tara, because of the extra effort and money to make all this, and it has a shelf life somewhat. So
Well, no, so actually, okay, so I kind of had plans of making this and giving it away, like.
So here, I'll tell you this. I just made a 50-gallon batch with my brand new brewer or sprayer, and I used 6 ounces
Wow.
of OHN and 6 ounces or 3 ounces of brown rice vinegar.
6 ounces, and you made how many gallons?
50 gallons.
Wow.
And I sprayed like
Think of that.
I sprayed like
Yeah.
16 fruit trees, 18 fruit trees, and a bunch of shit.
Saving money, man. Guys, regenerative. Everybody out there, check it out.
So sharing it is a great idea. I thought the same thing. If I make too much, I can give some away to a couple of people I've talked to. So if you already got that in mind, I was just saying,
yeah,
you make a giant jar of FPJ that only lasts a few months, that you can only use 50 gallons of anyway, like at 6 ounces per, what would you, 50 gallons?
Well, so seriously, like my plan is actually to do my whole yard. I actually have, my husband could hook me up with some tanks and fittings, right, Josh? And I'm going to make my husband hook me up with a thing for my whole yard, and I want to apply it on my roses and my bushes, my trees. Like I want to do like my whole property. This is what I want to do. So that's kind of my direction that I want to try and go.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
You got a nice property too. Yeah.
Thank you.
I like the way, if you ever finish your garden, I like the way it's set up. I like the idea. I like the idea. Yeah. No, it's still nice. It's just, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I love being outside, obviously. It's very awesome. So what's up? What else is up? What's up with you, Roger? What you got going on? What's new?
That's it. That's basically it. I'm just doing some of my KNF stuff, and I've been growing I've got my dwarf banana plants have got new nice shoots that are 3 or 4 or 5 inches. So that took a week or so. And I've got I haven't seen a whole lot of growth out of the lemon, orange, or lime tree yet. I did get some Dutch broom. I did get some horsetail rooted shoots, and I planted them in a trough. I bought a little trough, a garden trough kind of thing, and just filled that up, figuring I'll let them get, because I think Steve can probably tell me right here. What I read is, I didn't realize this, but it says when you get these rooted shoots, now I've also got a bunch of seeds for all these too, so the nettles and the Dutch broom, and then I got the moringa tree too. I got moringa seeds, so I got all that I'm going to be working on later on. But right now, just trying to get some trees and stuff going, because I've been wanting citrus trees and stuff for a long time. And then with the KNF, I decided to get these other plants. So, but Steve said with the shoots, when you put the shoots in there, you repot them like you did anything, and then the top's basically going to die, and the new tips and the new plants come up through the roots, like the roots come out and shoot up, right?
For what?
All right, the instructions and the video on the horsetail shoots that I got, like where they cut, they cut where you got a couple nodes, and they rooted them. You root them, and then, but that's not going to grow. It's going to grow out of the roots.
I've always had tubers. I just took a tuber section and transplanted it. I've never done it from cutting, so I couldn't tell you.
What do you mean when you say tuber?
So it has like a big, crazy, insane tuber-like root system, kind of like an iris or something like that, aquatic iris.
Like a potato.
No, like
well, similar to a potato.
Like mint had like big, like a tuber almost.
Like grass puts out tubulars, almost like.
Kind of.
But not as much. I know what you're talking about, but yeah.
Well, they described that the roots were going to take hold, and the roots were going to grow and then come up through the soil. The roots were actually going to grow up, and that was going to be the
case. I don't know.
Well, we'll see then. Here we go. We don't know.
Take pictures and post them on Insta. Let's see them, Robert.
Yeah, you just wanted to get me riled up, didn't you?
What's that Insta account?
How's your garden going, Tara?
My garden, all my little babies are looking good. I probably need to transplant them next week. I'm thinking 1 gallons maybe. They're all in solo cut bright sizes right now. So put them in 1 gallons and then go from there. Because I still have to know what the sexes are on them, right? So that's it. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing as Tuesday and last Thursday.
Yeah.
I've just been working on this greenhouse, trying to dodge thunderstorms, working on everything else, just getting everything up and running. So not anything in particular to talk about, just general construction stuff.
No, you look pretty happy out there every day.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, when you get to do that kind of work, you should be happy. Yeah.
So we got a real nice fishing hole right next door. So when we're done work, we just bring the rods, throw them in the back of the truck, and then when we're done work, we just wander down. We drive up nearby, down the corner, grab some beers and some bait and some dinner, and then we come back and go fishing. It's nice.
Well, I would like to say cheers. Thank you for organizing this tonight. I learned a lot, and Wade is an amazing man, and wow, we have a lot to learn. And yes, reach out in our own backyards. That's a great message, and thank you.
Yep.
So cheers, everyone. Good night.
Later, Tara.
Next week on Tuesday, we have Shangolos from Shaping Fire will be on, so that'll be really fun. He's really, really awesome, and yeah, it'll be really cool to have him on. He's doing all kinds of crazy things these days, so it'll be awesome. Yeah, so guess we'll wrap up the show. Thanks everyone for watching. We actually had a longer than normal show for once. It's been a while, so I think we might end up yeah, anyways, I'll get to that later once we actually get settled, so we'll talk about that later. But yeah, so be sure, if you're interested in the class that Josh and I were talking about, check out commercialapmjclass.com, or you can check out commercialaquaponicannabisclass.com. Both of them will take you there directly to the class link. And yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. Really hope to see you there. It'll be a great time of year to go up to Northern Washington. It's real good temperature that time of year, so it'll be really fun. And then you can find out this podcast at your SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, a whole bunch of different places. Or you can find the video format on YouTube if you're listening to the audio version. So, alrighty, thanks a lot for watching, and apologize for the audio wackiness. Google Hangouts seems to be bratty every now and then. I know Hash Church had a very similar issue the other day. So thanks for helping and struggling through it with us, and we'll catch you guys again next time. Cheers.
Good night, everybody.